Welcome back to another episode of Unexplained Diaries. In this episode, we are doing something a little different. Still unexplained, but this time it's glitch in the Matrix stories. These stories will have you questioning everything, and I mean everything. Before we start, where are you all tuning in from? Okay, now, get comfy, relax, and let's begin. I started noticing him in October when it was still dark when I left for work. My apartment was on the second floor of a brick building in North Jersey, on a street with a deli on one corner and a laundromat on the other. The bus stop was directly across from my bedroom window. Not a nice bus stop or anything, just a metal pole with a faded schedule on it and one of those glass shelters that always smelled like wet newspapers when it rained. I worked billing for a dental office in Hoken, so I caught the 6:42 most mornings. I had a routine. Coffee in a travel mug, keys in the right coat pocket, phone in the left, and I checked the street from my window before going down because the bus was early half the time and late the other half. That was how I first noticed the man. He stood inside the shelter every morning, facing my building. Not straight at my window exactly, but close enough that it felt like he could see me if the light was on behind me. He wore a long, dark green coat, the kind that went past the knees, and he held a brown leather briefcase at his side. He had short gray hair, combed flat, and a narrow face. He looked maybe late 50s, but it was hard to tell from across the street. The first few times I didn't think much of it. Same commute, same neighborhood, same bus. People repeat. I saw the same nurse with purple clogs, the same guy who ate a banana while speed walking, the same woman who carried a plastic bag from ShopRite every morning even though the store wasn't open yet. But the man was different, because he never seemed to be arriving or waiting. He was just there. I would look out at 6:25 and he was there. I would leave my building at 6:34 and he was there. I would cross the street, stand 10 feet away from him and he was there. He never looked at his phone. He never shifted his weight. He never checked down the road for the bus. He didn't smoke, didn't cough, didn't rub his hands together when it was cold. His briefcase always hung from his right hand, perfectly straight, like it had no weight. For a while, I made up normal explanations. Maybe he had hearing issues and didn't move much. Maybe he was anxious. Maybe he worked security and had learned to stand still. Maybe I only noticed because my mornings were boring. The first thing that bothered me happened on a rainy Tuesday. It was one of those thin, cold rains that made everything shiny. I went downstairs with my umbrella half open and crossed over to the stop. There were 3 of us waiting. Me, a college kid with headphones, and the man in the green coat. The bus shelter glass was fogged up in patches, and rain was running down it in skinny lines. The man stood inside the shelter, facing forward, same as always. I stood just outside because I didn't like being too close to him. I remember glancing at his shoes because they were dry. The pavement around him was wet. The bench was wet. The shelter floor had puddles near the edge, but his black shoes looked completely dry. Not just less wet, dry like they had never touched the sidewalk. Then the college kid stepped into the shelter, shook water off his hoodie, and accidentally bumped the man's shoulder. Except he didn't react. The kid didn't either. There was contact. I saw it. His sleeve hit the man's coat, but the man didn't rock or turn, and the kid didn't say sorry. He just leaned back against the glass and kept bobbing his head to whatever he was listening to. I stared at them longer than I should have. The kid looked real. Wet sneakers, red nose, cracked phone case. The man looked real too, but in a flatter way. That was the only word I had for it, like he was part of the scene but not part of the weather. The bus came and I got on first. I sat on the left side, near the middle, so I could see the shelter as we pulled away. The college kid got on after me. The man did not. He stayed there, still holding the briefcase. I looked back through the bus window and he was facing the bus as it left, although I didn't remember seeing him turn. After that, I started paying attention. His coat was always the same dark green. Same 3 buttons closed, same briefcase, same blank stare, not mean, not sad, not tired, just empty, like someone waiting for a picture to be taken. I asked my downstairs neighbor Omaira if she had seen him. She had a small white dog named Tula that barked at every delivery truck and stroller, and she walked her before 7 most mornings. The older guy at the stop, I asked her one evening while we were both checking mail. She frowned like she was trying to place him. Which older guy? Green coat, briefcase, there every morning. She sorted through envelopes and shook her head. I don't take that bus. I know, but you walked Tula right past there. Omaira looked through the lobby glass toward the street. Maybe. I don't notice people that early. That was fair, I guess. But the next morning I watched from my window as she walked Tula right in front of the shelter. Tula stopped near the pole and sniffed hard at the base. Omaira tugged the leash. The man was 3 feet away from her, facing forward. Omaira never looked at him. Tula did, though. She looked up at him and tucked herself behind Omaira's boot, which I had never seen her do. Tula barked at pigeons like they owed her money, but she didn't bark at him. She just backed up until her leash went tight. At work that day, I kept thinking about it and felt stupid. I was a 34-year-old woman with rent, a car payment, and a boss who wrote emails like ransom notes. I did not have time to be creeped out by a commuter. Still, I started taking photos. Not obvious ones. I felt weird about it, so I would stand behind my curtain in the morning and zoom in with my phone. The photos were bad because of the distance and the dirty window, but they showed him. Green coat, briefcase, gray hair. Some mornings the image blurred around him in a way the rest of the photo didn't. I blame my phone. It was old and the camera was cracked near the lens. One Wednesday, the bus stop sign got replaced. The old sign had been bent for months, probably from somebody hitting it with a truck mirror. When I came home from work, there were 2 guys from the county taking it down. They put up a new pole a few feet closer to the corner. The shelter stayed where it was, but the actual sign moved. The next morning, the man was standing under the old spot. There was no sign there anymore, just 2 small holes in the sidewalk filled with darker concrete dust. Everyone else waited by the new pole. I watched from my window as the nurse with the purple clogs walked to the new sign and checked the schedule. A teenager with a backpack stood beside her. The man was 6 feet away in the shelter, staring forward like nothing had changed. When I went outside, I stood near the new pole with the others. I told myself not to look at him. Of course I looked anyway. His reflection showed in the shelter glass behind him, but it looked wrong. The shelter glass reflected the laundromat lights, the passing cars, the wet street. It reflected me when I moved. His reflection was there, but it seemed a second behind. When he blinked, the reflection didn't. When he adjusted his grip on the briefcase, the reflection still had his hand hanging straight down. Then the bus pulled up and blocked my view. I got on and sat near the front that time. My heart was beating too fast, and I was angry at myself for being scared of something I couldn't even describe without sounding ridiculous. For 2 days after that, he wasn't there. It should have made me feel better, but it didn't. The stop looked too empty without him. I found myself checking the shelter at night when I got home. I checked from my kitchen while heating soup. I checked before bed. I even woke up around 3 one morning, got a glass of water, and looked across the street. The shelter was empty. On Friday, he was back. Same coat, same briefcase, same stare. That morning, a strange thing happened with time. I left my apartment at 6:32 because my phone said 6:32. I remember because I was late and had to skip rinsing my coffee mug. I locked my door, went downstairs, and when I got to the street, the deli clock across the road said 6:18. It was an old digital clock in the deli window that usually ran 2 minutes fast. I stopped on the sidewalk and checked my phone again. It said 6:18 too. I stood there with my keys still in my hand, trying to figure out how I had misread it. I opened my texts to see if maybe the phone had glitched, but the last message from my sister was time-stamped 6:29, which made no sense because it now said 6:18. The man across the street was already in the shelter. A bus came at 6:24. Not my bus. Same route number, same direction, but nearly 20 minutes early. The sign over the windshield flashed 119 New York, then blank, then 119 New York again. No one got on. There were no passengers inside, and the driver didn't look at us. He stopped, opened the doors, stared straight ahead, then closed them and drove off. The nurse with the purple clogs muttered, "That was weird." I almost answered her. I wanted to say, "You saw that too?" But her face was already back in her phone, and I was afraid of sounding too eager. When the real bus came at 6:44, the man didn't get on. That became another rule. He never got on any bus. Not once. I saw buses stop in front of him at least a dozen times. People moved around him, stepped past him, brushed close to him, and he remained in place. By November, the mornings had turned colder, and the shelter glass had that dark mirror look before sunrise. The streetlights made everything yellow. I started waiting in my apartment until I saw the bus turn the corner, then running downstairs, because being near him felt harder each day. One morning, my friend Leona slept over after we went out for dinner and watched bad TV until midnight. She had to leave around the same time as me, so I told her about the man while we were getting ready. I tried to make it sound funny. "There's this guy across the street who I swear is a background character who forgot his cue," I said. Leona looked out the bedroom window while pulling on one boot. "Where?" "At the stop. Green coat." She leaned closer to the glass. "I see the shelter. He's inside it." "No, he's not." I laughed because I thought she was messing with me. Then I looked. He was there. He stood in the center of the shelter, briefcase in hand, facing us. The overhead light inside the shelter flickered on and off, and each time it came back on, his face appeared a little clearer. "He's right there," I said. Leona gave me a look. "Mara, there's nobody there." I pointed, actually pressed my finger to the window. "In the green coat." She didn't smile. "I'm not joking. I see a bench and trash on the ground." I grabbed my phone and took a photo. When I looked at it, he was in the picture, but faint. Not transparent, exactly. More like he had been photographed through smoke. I shoved the phone toward Leona. She stared at the screen and then at the window. "That's from now?" "Yes." She zoomed in with 2 fingers. Her expression changed, but not enough to make me feel better. "That could be a reflection from inside your room," she said. "Of who?" She handed the phone back. "I don't know." Neither of us spoke much after that. She left by rideshare instead of walking to the train, even though the station was only 8 minutes away. The worst morning was the Monday after Thanksgiving. It was foggy, the thick, low kind that made the end of the block disappear. I woke up already tired. My alarm had gone off at 5:50, but I had a dream that it kept going off in different rooms of my apartment, and I had to keep finding it. When I got up, my bedroom door was open, even though I always slept with it closed because the radiator clicked in the hallway. The man was at the stop. I watched him while I drank coffee. Something about him looked different, and it took me a minute to figure out what. His briefcase was in his left hand instead of his right. That bothered me more than it should have. I took a picture. In the photo, the briefcase was in his right hand. I looked out the window again. Left hand. I checked the photo again. Right hand. I took another one. Right hand. Out the window. Left. I shut my curtains and stood there, breathing through my nose like I had just walked too fast. I told myself it was a reflection issue, that glass flipped things, that I was tired. But I wasn't looking at him in a mirror. I was looking across the street. My bus was late that day. At 6:42, nothing came. At 6:50, nothing. The street stayed too quiet. Usually there were delivery vans, people scraping windshields, someone yelling into a phone. That morning, every sound seemed muffled by the fog. I should have gone back upstairs and called a car. I almost did. But the idea of turning my back to the shelter made me stay where I was. I stood outside my building, not crossing the street, holding my coffee mug with both hands. The man stood inside the shelter. At 6:56, I realized he hadn't moved in almost 20 minutes. Not once. Not his head, not his shoulders, not even a shift in the briefcase. The fog curled around the glass shelter. A drop of water slid down the pane behind him. A car crept past with its headlights on. The driver's face turned toward him, then forward again. The man's eyes stayed fixed on my building. I looked down at my phone to check the transit app. It said the bus was arriving in 3 minutes, then it said 12 minutes. Then it went blank and showed no arrivals. When I looked back up, the shelter was empty. I didn't understand it at first. My brain kept trying to put him there because he had been there a second earlier. Same spot, same coat, same briefcase. But the shelter was empty. The bench was empty. The sidewalk was empty. There were no footsteps in the damp grime near the curb. Then I saw the glass. The shelter had 3 dark panels along the back. In the middle panel, his reflection was still standing there. Not a blur, not a shadow. Him. He was reflected in the glass like he was standing inside the shelter and facing out. But the actual space in front of the glass was empty. I could see the bench through it. I could see the torn sticker on the shelter wall. I could see a crushed paper cup near the curb. His reflection held the briefcase in the left hand. I took one step backward and bumped into the front steps of my building. My coffee spilled over my fingers, hot enough to hurt, but I didn't make a sound. The reflection blinked. The empty shelter did not change. A woman in a tan coat came walking down the sidewalk with her hood up. She passed right in front of the shelter between me and the glass. For a second, her body blocked the reflection. When she moved past, the reflection was still there, but now its head was turned slightly toward her, like it had watched her pass. The woman didn't react. She kept walking. My phone buzzed in my hand, and I almost dropped it. It was a notification from the transit app. 119 arriving now. There was no bus. The street was empty both ways. I backed up the steps, unlocked the lobby door without looking away, and went inside. The second the door shut behind me, the lobby lights flickered twice. I ran up the stairs, which I know sounds dramatic, but I did. I ran like a kid. In my apartment, I locked the door and went to the bedroom window. The man was gone from the glass. The shelter was empty for maybe 10 seconds. Then the bus came. It came out of the fog from the left, slow and quiet, and stopped at the sign. The doors opened. No one was waiting there. The driver sat with both hands on the wheel. I could see the lit interior, the empty front seats, the dirty floor. Then the man stepped into view from the right side of the shelter. Not from behind it, not from down the sidewalk. He just entered the edge of the scene like he had been standing 2 feet outside my view the whole time. Green coat, briefcase in right hand now. He got on the bus. That was the first and only time I saw him do it. The doors closed and the bus drove off. I watched it until it disappeared past the laundromat. I didn't go to work. I called in and said I had a migraine, which was partly true by then. Around 9:30, I went downstairs because I needed to know if something was still wrong. The fog had lifted. The street looked normal. Trucks, horns, a man stacking bread trays outside the deli. I crossed to the bus stop. Inside the shelter on the bench was a brown leather briefcase. It sat upright, handle folded down, dry and clean. I stood about 6 feet away from it for a long time. People walked around me. A bus came and went. Nobody touched it. Nobody seemed to notice it. I finally went into the deli and told the owner, Mr. Parisi, that someone had left a bag at the stop. He came out with me, wiping his hands on a towel. "What bag?" he said. I pointed. The bench was empty. I know how that sounds. I was looking right at it from the deli doorway, and when we stepped outside, it was gone. Not stolen. There hadn't been enough time. No one had approached it. It was just not there. Mr. Parisi looked at me carefully and asked if I was okay. I said yes, and then I went back upstairs. For the next week, I avoided the bus. I paid for ride shares I couldn't really afford. I changed my morning routine. I left through the back alley, even though it smelled like garbage and made my commute longer. I didn't see the man. Then one Thursday night, I came home late from work because we were closing out end-of-month billing. It was after 8, dark and windy, with trash skittering along the curb. I got out of the car in front of my building and looked across the street before I could stop myself. The shelter was empty. I felt embarrassed by how relieved I was. When I got upstairs, I took off my coat, fed my cat Vesper, and went into the bathroom to wash my face. The bathroom window faced the alley, not the street. There was no way to see the bus stop from there. I was rinsing cleanser off my hands when I noticed something in the mirror. Behind me, in the reflected doorway, was the dark shape of a man in a long green coat. I turned around so fast I hit my hip on the sink. The doorway was empty. My apartment was quiet except for Vesper crunching food in the kitchen. I checked every room with a wooden spoon in my hand because that was the closest thing to a weapon I had. Nobody was there. The door was still locked. The chain was still on. When I went back into the bathroom, I made myself look in the mirror again. Nothing. The next morning, I checked from my bedroom window at 6:25. The bus stop was normal. A woman in a red scarf stood under the shelter. A man with a backpack leaned against the pole. Cars moved through light rain. No green coat. No briefcase. I went to work on the bus again because eventually you have to stop arranging your whole life around something no one else can see. For almost 2 months, nothing happened. Then in January, the city replaced the shelter glass after someone cracked one of the panels. I came home from work and saw the maintenance crew removing the old dark pair panels and stacking them against the curb. The middle panel was the one with the worst scratches, the one where I had seen the reflection. I stood across the street pretending to look for my keys. As one of the workers lifted that panel, the glass caught the light from the deli window. For a second, I saw a reflection in it that didn't match the street. A woman stood in the glass. She was on the opposite side of the road in front of my building, wearing my gray winter coat and holding my coffee mug with both hands. Her hair was tied up the way I wore mine in the morning. She looked tired and scared and focused on something across from her. Then the worker turned the panel, and the reflection slid away. The next morning, I left early and walked to the train. The call came in at 8:13 on a Thursday night while I was eating cereal out of a mixing bowl and watching an old episode of a cooking show I didn't even like. My parents had gone to a retirement party for one of my dad's coworkers in Fairview, about 40 minutes away. My older brother, Cale, was at his girlfriend's house. I was 17, a junior in high school, and I had been alone in the house plenty of times. It was not a big deal. Our house was a one-story ranch on the edge of Kettering, Ohio, with a narrow backyard, a detached garage, and a crawl space that smelled like damp cardboard. No upstairs, no basement you could walk around in, nothing like that. It had rained all afternoon, and by the time it got dark, the whole neighborhood had that wet, quiet feeling. Cars hissed by on the main road a few blocks over. Water dripped from the gutters in a steady rhythm. The kitchen window above the sink was black except for my reflection and the little yellow porch light behind me. My phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at it, expecting my mom asking if I had fed our cat Noodle. Instead, the screen showed my own name. Not my number. My name. Eli Mercer. For a second, I thought it was one of those spam calls that spoofed numbers, except my contact photo was there too. It was the dumb one Cale had taken of me at a Tigers game with mustard on my hoodie. I had never called myself before, obviously, so I didn't even know phones could show it like that. I let it ring 3 times while I stared at it. Then I answered. I didn't say anything right away. I just held it to my ear and listened. There was breathing. Not heavy horror movie breathing. Just someone close to the phone trying not to make noise. I could hear a faint static crackle under it, like a bad connection. I looked around the kitchen, then toward the short hallway that led to the bedrooms. "Hello?" I said. The breathing stopped. Then my own voice whispered, "Don't go upstairs." It was my voice. Not kind of like my voice. Mine. Quiet and shaky, but mine. I knew the way I said don't because I clipped the T when I talked fast. I knew the little crack in it too, the one that happened when I was trying not to sound scared. I pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at the screen. Still my name. The call timer said 0. Even though I had answered at least 10 seconds earlier, I put it back to my ear. Who is this? There was another breath. Then the call ended. I stood there with the spoon in my hand and milk dripping off it onto the table. The cooking show kept playing in the living room. A man on TV laughed too loudly about burning garlic. It sounded fake and far away. The first thing I did was check the call log. It showed an incoming call from me at 8:13, but where the number should have been, it just said no caller ID. That didn't match the screen I had seen. I opened my own contact. My number was normal. My photo was normal. Nothing else looked weird. I almost called my mom, but I felt stupid before I even tapped her name. What would I say? My own phone called me and told me not to go upstairs in a house that didn't have stairs. I set the phone down and laughed once because my body needed to do something. Then a floorboard creaked above me. I froze. It came from over the hallway, somewhere between my room and my parents' room. It was the exact sound old houses make when someone shifts their weight on a loose board. A slow bend, then a soft pop. I stared at the ceiling. Our house had a low attic, but not the kind with a floor. You accessed it through a square panel in the hall closet, and it was mostly insulation, rafters, and old Christmas decorations stacked near the opening. You couldn't stand up in it, you couldn't walk around in it. My dad had crawled up there once to fix a vent fan and came down with pink insulation all over his sleeves, swearing he was never going up again. Another creak came, a little farther left. I turned off the TV. The house went quiet except for the refrigerator and the rain ticking against the vent hood. Noodle? I called because that was the easiest answer. Noodle was 12 pounds and orange and had the brain of a wet sock, but sometimes he got into weird places. He had once trapped himself inside the linen closet for 6 hours and came out acting like we had betrayed him. I heard his collar bell from the living room. He was sitting on the back of the couch, staring at the hallway. His tail was puffed out. I tried to tell myself the roof was settling from the rain. The temperature was dropping. Wood made noises. Houses made noises. That was normal. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text. From me. I didn't open it right away. I stood there looking at the notification banner, feeling my face get hot. The message said, "Kitchen light off." The kitchen light was on. I looked at it like it had personally offended me. Then I looked at the windows. The kitchen had two, one over the sink facing the side yard and one near the table facing the backyard. Both were dark. With the light on, anyone outside could see straight in. I walked to the wall switch and turned it off. The kitchen went gray. The only light came from the living room lamp and the microwave clock. My phone buzzed again in my hand. Good. I backed into the counter. I opened the thread. It was in the conversation with myself, which I used sometimes to send photos or notes from my phone to my laptop. The last real thing in there was from 3 weeks earlier, a picture of a chemistry worksheet. Now there were 2 new texts from my own number. I typed, "Who is this?" The typing bubble appeared immediately. It stayed for a long time, 10 seconds, maybe 15. Then it disappeared. A sound came from the hallway closet. Not a creak this time, a scrape. I knew exactly what that closet sounded like because it had the attic panel. The door stuck in the summer, and the metal coat hangers scraped the inside when you pulled it open too fast. I walked to the edge of the kitchen and looked down the hall. The hallway was dark except for the weak nightlight plugged in near the bathroom. My room was at the end on the left. Kale's old room was across from it. My parents' room was closer. The hall closet was between the bathroom and my room. The closet door was open about 3 inches. I had not opened it. I wanted to leave. That was the first clear thought I had that made sense. Just leave through the front door, go to the Caldwells next door, knock until someone answered. I didn't need to prove anything. I grabbed my keys from the bowl by the fridge and started toward the living room. My phone rang again. My own name filled the screen. I didn't answer. I let it ring while I walked faster. The second I reached the living room, the front porch light went out. It didn't flicker, it just clicked off. The call stopped. Noodle jumped down from the couch and ran under the coffee table. His claws skittered on the wood floor. I could see the front door from where I stood, with the little window at the top showing black glass and a blurry reflection of the room. My phone buzzed. Not front. I stared at the message until the words stopped looking like words. There was a side door in the kitchen that led to the driveway. I turned around, planning to go that way, but something moved in the hall mirror. We had a narrow mirror on the wall outside the bathroom. My mom used it to check her hair before leaving the house. From the living room, I could see it at an angle. In the mirror, the hallway closet door was wide open. In the actual hallway from where I stood, the closet door was still only open a few inches. I blinked hard. I moved 1 step to the right, thinking it was the angle. In the mirror, the closet stayed wide open. Dark inside. Coats hanging there. The attic panel above them was pushed up and resting crooked. The real closet door had not moved. I could see both at once. Door mostly closed in the hallway, door wide open in the mirror. Something tapped above the ceiling. 3 taps. Then 3 taps again. It sounded like knuckles on wood, slow and patient. My phone buzzed. Bathroom, I didn't understand at first. Then another message came. Go bathroom, lock door. I didn't want to go toward the hallway. Every part of me wanted to run out of the house, but the front door was past the hallway opening, and the side door was back through the dark kitchen with all the windows. The bathroom was 6 steps into the hall. 6 steps and then a lock. I grabbed Noodle from under the coffee table, even though he tried to twist out of my arms. He dug one claw into my sleeve, but didn't make a sound. That scared me. That scared me more than the claw. I moved into the hallway. The air felt colder there. Not freezing, just different, like when you open a door to a room no one has been using. The closet door was still cracked open. From this close, I could see a strip of darkness inside. The mirror beside it showed the door wide open, and the attic panel above it black and empty. I kept my eyes on the real door. A board creaked directly over my head. Noodle pressed his face into my elbow. I stepped into the bathroom, shut the door, and locked it. Then I sat on the closed toilet lid with my feet pulled up on the bath mat like a little kid. My phone was in my lap. My hands were shaking so badly that the screen kept lighting up from my thumb brushing it. For about a minute, nothing happened. Nothing happened. I could hear rain. I could hear the bathroom fan humming even though I hadn't turned it on. I could hear my own breathing and Noodle's tiny anxious chirps. Then my phone buzzed again. It was a photo. From me. I didn't want to open it, but I did. The photo showed my bathroom door from the hallway. It was taken from about chest height, maybe 10 feet away. The door was closed. Light showed under it. My old blue towel hung crooked on the hook, exactly how it was right then. At the bottom of the photo near the floor, I could see Noodle's orange tail sticking out from under my arm because he was sitting in my lap. That meant the picture had just been taken. From outside the bathroom, I covered my mouth with my hand and tried not to make noise. Another text came. Stay until 8:31. I checked the time. 8:19. 12 minutes felt impossible. I called my mom then. I didn't care how it sounded. The call rang once and went straight to voicemail. I called my dad. Same thing. I called Kale. He answered on the fourth ring, laughing at something in the background. What? Can you come home? I whispered. What happened? I need you to come home right now. There was a pause. Are you crying? No, just come home. Where are Mom and Dad? Fairview. Please, Kale. He got serious then. Okay, I'm leaving. What's going on? A sound came from outside the bathroom door. Not tapping, not creaking. Breathing. Slow, close breathing, right on the other side of the door. I held the phone so tight my fingers hurt. Kale said, Eli? The bathroom fan shut off. The breathing outside the door continued. Kale's voice changed. What is that? I didn't answer. The doorknob turned once, very gently. It didn't rattle. Whoever or whatever was there didn't force it. It just turned until the lock stopped it, then turned back. Kale said, I'm calling 911. No, I whispered, though I don't know why. Maybe because I still didn't know what to tell anyone. Maybe because the phone had told me to stay and part of me believed it. The line crackled. For a second I heard Kale breathing, and then I heard my own voice underneath his, whispering through the speaker. Don't talk. Kale went silent. The call dropped. My phone screen went black. It would not turn back on, even though it had been at 46%. I sat there in the dark bathroom holding my dead phone, listening to the breathing outside the door. It stayed there for a while, long enough that my legs started to cramp from holding them up, long enough that Noodle stopped squirming and just sat stiff against my chest. Then, from somewhere above the bathroom ceiling, a floorboard creaked. This one was loud. It bent slowly, then popped. Dust fell from the bathroom vent. Our house had no second floor. The breathing outside the door stopped. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps move down the hall. Not above me. In the hall now. Slow steps, heel then toe toward the living room. The front door opened. I knew the sound. The weather stripping stuck, so it always made a soft peel when the door pulled away from the frame. Rain noise got louder. The door closed. My phone turned on by itself. The time was 8:31. I waited another minute because I couldn't move. Then 2. Then I heard a car tear into the driveway and Kale yelling my name before he even got inside. I unlocked the bathroom door and he was standing in the hall in his socks because he had apparently left his shoes at his girlfriend's. He looked past me toward the closet. The closet door was closed. The hall mirror showed it closed too. Kale checked every room with a baseball bat from his trunk. The front door was locked. The side door was locked. Every window was locked. The attic panel was in place. He pulled down the hall closet string, climbed on a chair, and shoved his head up there with his phone flashlight. Nothing, he said, but his voice didn't sound normal. My parents got home 20 minutes later, angry at first because Kale had called them sounding insane. Then my mom saw my face and stopped talking. My dad checked the attic again. He checked the crawl space. He walked around outside in the rain with a flashlight. There were no footprints in the mud under the windows, no broken screens, no open doors. My phone worked fine after that. The texts were gone. The call log still showed one incoming call at 8:13, but it had no name, no number, and no duration. The photo of the bathroom door was gone too. I know everyone says that when they don't have proof, but Kale believed me because he heard the breathing and the other voice on the call. He never joked about it, not once. For a few days, my parents thought someone had messed with the phone somehow. My dad called the carrier. They said spoofing happened, but they couldn't explain the deleted messages or why a call from no number would show my own contact photo. They definitely couldn't explain the noises in the house, so nobody brought that part up much. A week later, I found something that made me feel sick in a quieter way. I was cleaning my room because my mom kept saying I needed to get back to normal. I picked up the hoodie I had worn that night and noticed a small white mark on the sleeve near the cuff. At first, I thought it was dried milk from the cereal, but it wasn't. It was chalky and powdery. Insulation dust. The pink kind from the attic. I put the hoodie in the laundry basket and didn't say anything. Things mostly went back to normal after that. My parents installed a camera by the front door and one facing the hallway. Kale slept at home for a while. Noodle stopped sitting on the back of the couch and started sleeping in my room with the door shut. About a month later, on a windy afternoon after school, I was home alone again for maybe 20 minutes. It was still light out, and my mom was just at the grocery store, so I didn't feel scared the same way. I was in the kitchen making toast when my phone buzzed. It was a text from myself. For 1 second, I could not move. Then I looked at the screen. The message said, "You listened." I stood there until the toast popped up behind me. Then, another message appeared underneath it. "Sorry about upstairs." The woman came in during the last hour of my shift, when the store had that tired feeling it got after dinner. I worked evenings at a small grocery store in Derry, New Hampshire, not one of the big chains, just a family-owned place called Salloway Market with low ceilings, old tile floors, and aisles so narrow that two carts could barely pass each other. It sat between a dry cleaner and a closed-down video rental place that still had sun-faded posters in the windows. Most nights were slow after 8, especially if the weather was bad. That night, it had been raining since around 4. Not a storm, just steady cold rain that made people keep their heads down and hurry through the parking lot. The automatic doors were squeaking every time they opened because water kept getting tracked into the entrance. I had been on register 2 since 5, with my coworker Nisha stocking chips near the front, and my manager Alden in the back office doing inventory. I remember being bored enough to count the ceiling stains above the cigarette display. The woman came in at 8:47. I noticed the time because I had been waiting for 9:30 like it was a holiday. The little clock on the register screen showed 20:47, and I had just checked it after ringing up an older guy who bought canned soup and lottery tickets. The woman walked in alone, wearing a gray raincoat with the hood down. Her hair was dark blonde or light brown, cut just below her chin and damp at the ends. She looked tired in a way that made her face seem loose, like she had been awake too long. She wasn't old, maybe early 40s. She had a canvas tote bag over one shoulder, dark blue with a white bird printed on it. She didn't take a basket. She walked straight to the dairy case. I watched her because there was nothing else happening. She picked up a half-gallon of whole milk. Then she went to aisle 3 and grabbed a loaf of white bread from the bottom shelf. Then she went to the little battery rack near the register and picked out a 4-pack of AA batteries. Milk, bread, batteries. It was normal. People bought weird combinations all the time. Once a guy bought birthday candles, bleach, and a rotisserie chicken at 9 in the morning, and I had never thought about it again. The woman set the 3 items on my belt and looked down at them, not at me. "Find everything okay?" I asked. She took a second to answer, like she had to remember where she was. "Just these," she said. Power's flickering at the house. I nodded. Yeah, this rain's been messing with the lights all night. She didn't react to that. She just stared at the card reader. I scanned the milk first. The barcode didn't catch the first time, so I had to drag it across twice. Then the bread, then the batteries. 1146, I said. She inserted her card. The machine made the little beep. Approved. While the receipt printed, she looked over her shoulder toward the front windows. The parking lot was mostly empty. There was my beat-up Corolla under the light, Nisha's red Civic near the side, and maybe 2 customer cars. Rain streaked down the glass, so everything outside looked smeared. The woman said, "I hate when it gets quiet like this." I thought she meant the store. "Yeah," I said. "Slow nights feel longer." She looked at me then for the first time. Her eyes were pale, maybe gray, and a little watery. She had the kind of expression people get when they want to ask something but decide not to. The receipt finished printing. I tore it off and put it in the bag with her stuff. "Have a good night," I said. She picked up the bag and said, "You too, Owen." I froze for half a second because I was not wearing a name tag. Mine had broken 2 weeks earlier when the pin snapped, and Alden kept forgetting to order new ones. My hoodie had the store logo but not my name. I figured maybe she had heard Nisha say it earlier, or maybe she was a regular I didn't recognize. Small town. Not impossible. She walked out through the automatic doors. The doors squeaked. The little bell above them made one weak ding, even though it was not supposed to ring with the automatic doors. It did that sometimes when the air shifted. I watched her cross the wet parking lot and get into a dark SUV parked near the curb. The brake lights came on. Then she drove away toward the main road. I remember rubbing my eyes after she left. I had a dull headache from the fluorescent lights. Nisha came up front with an armful of tortilla chips and asked if I had a spare box cutter, and I told her mine was by the gum display. That was maybe 2 minutes after the woman left. At 8:52, the doors opened again. The same woman walked in. Same gray raincoat, same damp hair, same blue tote bag with the white bird, same tired face. At first, my brain did not understand what I was seeing. I thought she had forgotten something. That happens all the time. People buy milk and then come back 30 seconds later for eggs or cigarettes or a scratch ticket. But she didn't look at me. She didn't look embarrassed or hurried. She walked straight to the dairy case. I turned and watched her. She picked up a half-gallon of whole milk. My stomach did this weird little drop, like when you miss a step in the dark. She went to aisle 3. I leaned over the counter to keep her in sight. She grabbed a loaf of white bread from the bottom shelf. Same brand, same shelf. Then she walked to the battery rack and picked up a 4-pack of AA batteries. Nisha came up beside me with the box cutter in her hand. "What are you staring at?" she asked. "That woman was just here," I said. Nisha glanced over. "Who?" "Her. Gray coat." "I didn't see her." "You were right here. I was in aisle 5. You came up after she left," Nisha shrugged. "Maybe she forgot something. She's buying the same stuff." Nisha gave me a look like I was making the shift weird on purpose and went back to stocking. The woman placed the milk, bread, and batteries on the belt in the exact same order. Milk closest to me, bread behind it, batteries on top of the bread. I did not touch anything at first. She stared at the card reader. "Find everything okay?" I asked because my mouth said it before my brain stopped me. She paused. "Just these," she said. "Power's flickering at the house." Same words. Same flat, tired voice, same small delay before answering. I felt my face get hot. I looked at the items and then at her. There was a drop of rain on her left cheek, just under her eye. I had noticed it the first time because I thought for a second she was crying. It was there again. Same spot. I scanned the milk. The barcode didn't catch the first time. My hands stopped. The scanner light flashed red across the jug. I looked down at the screen. Nothing had registered. I dragged the milk over again, and it beeped. Then the bread, then the batteries. 1146, I said, and my voice sounded wrong. She put the card in. The machine beeped. Approved. I reached for the receipt before it printed, then realized my hand was shaking. While the receipt came out, she looked over her shoulder toward the front windows. "I hate when it gets quiet like this," she said. I didn't answer right away. Rain slid down the glass outside. Her reflection showed faintly in the window. Mine did too, behind the counter. The weird thing was that in the reflection, her hood was up. In the store, it was down. I blinked and looked again. The reflection was messy because of the rain and lights, but I could see it clearly enough. Gray hood up around her face in the glass. Gray hood down against her back in front of me. She turned back to me. I tore off the receipt and didn't put it in the bag. I held it. "Do you come in here a lot?" I asked. Her eyes moved from the receipt to my face. "No," she said. Then, after a second, she added, "You too, Owen." I had not said "have a good night" yet. She picked up the bag and walked out. The automatic doors squeaked. The bell gave the same weak ding. I watched her cross the parking lot again. Same path. Same dark SUV near the curb. The trick came on. She drove away toward the main road. I stood there holding the receipt until the paper started curling against my fingers. Then I hit the transaction history button on the register. The last sale listed was the older guy with soup and lottery tickets at $8.43. Under that was a bottle return from $8.36. There was no sale at $8.47. There was only the one I had just done at $8.52. I backed out and checked again. Same thing. I printed the journal report for the last hour, which I wasn't supposed to do without Alden, but I didn't care. The little report came out with thin gray lines of text. Soup and lottery tickets. Then the milk, bread, batteries at $8.52. Nothing at $8.47. I opened the drawer where we kept extra receipts in case customers left them. Empty, except for a coupon someone didn't want. I checked the trash by my feet. There were 2 gum wrappers, a used receipt from before my shift, and 1 torn produce bag. No first receipt. Nisha came back up front and saw me digging. She came in twice. Who? The woman. She bought this stuff twice. Nisha looked toward the door. I only saw her once. You didn't hear me ring her up the first time? No. You talked to me right after. I asked you for the box cutter, yeah, right after she left. Nisha's expression changed a little. She looked less annoyed and more careful. Owen, I came up because you were staring at the doors, she said. Nobody had just left. That made me angry, not at her, just at the whole situation. Yes, they had, I said. She drove off in a dark SUV. Nisha glanced outside. There's no SUV. I looked. The parking lot was empty except for our 2 cars and Alden's truck by the dumpster. The first real fear settled in then, heavy and cold. Before that, it had been confusion. This was the moment I understood something was not just odd. Something had gone out of order in a way I couldn't fix by checking the register. I told Nisha I was going to ask Alden to pull the security camera. She didn't stop me. Alden hated being interrupted in the office, especially near close. He was sitting at the desk with inventory sheets spread everywhere and open can of diet soda beside the keyboard. "What's broken?" he asked without looking up. "Can you check the cameras from like 5 minutes ago?" He sighed. "Why?" I told him a customer came in twice. The first transaction vanished. He stared at me. "Are you high?" "No." "Then what does that mean?" "I don't know what it means. Can you just look?" He grumbled, but clicked into the security feed. The cameras were old and grainy, but they recorded everything. Register 2 front doors, parking lot, aisle 3, dairy case. He pulled up the footage starting at 8:45. We watched me standing at the register leaning on my elbows. At 8:47, the automatic doors opened. No one came in. They opened wide, stayed open for about 4 seconds, then closed. Alden said, "Sensor's touchy in rain." I didn't answer. On the screen, I turned my head and watched something move across the store. My eyes tracked from the doors to the dairy case. I straightened up. I smiled, my work smile. I said something. There was no audio, but I knew I was saying, "Find everything okay?" even though nobody stood there. The camera at register 2 showed me scanning nothing. My hand moved over the scanner 3 times. Milk height, bread height, batteries height. Each time the scanner flashed red. No items appeared on the belt. Then I looked toward the card reader. I waited. I tore a receipt from the printer. Alden paused the video. There was no receipt in my hand. My hand made the motion, but the printer had not printed anything. I felt dizzy enough that I grabbed the back of his chair. Alden looked up at me. "What the hell is this?" "I don't know." He rewound it and played it again. Same thing. Doors opened. Empty entrance. Me watching someone who wasn't there. Me scanning air. Me handing a bag to no one, except there was no bag either. At 8:52, the woman appeared on the front camera. She walked in wearing the gray raincoat, hood down, blue tote bag on her shoulder. She picked up milk, bread, and batteries. She came to my register. Everything looked normal on the footage. The items were visible, the receipt printed. She left with the bag. Alden didn't say anything for a long time. Then he clicked to the parking lot camera. At 8:52, she walked to the dark SUV by the curb. Brake lights, pulling away. At 8:47, when I had seen the first SUV, the parking lot camera showed nothing but rain. Alden rubbed his mouth and leaned back. Maybe the timestamp skipped, he said. It didn't skip me. He had no answer for that. We went back out front. Nisha was standing by the register, looking toward the doors with her arms crossed. She said the lights over aisle 2 had flickered while we were gone, but only once. I checked the transaction history again. Still only the 8:52 sale. Then the receipt I had printed at 8:52 was gone. I know where I put it. I had set it on the counter beside the register, weighed down under the little plastic sign that said, "No cash back." The sign was still there. The receipt was not. I looked on the floor, under the scanner, in the bagging area, in the trash. Nothing. The customer copy was gone, and the register history still said the sale had happened. I printed a duplicate, and this time the receipt came out blank except for the store name at the top and the total at the bottom. No items. Just Salloway Market total, 11.46, paid, card, no time, no transaction number. Alden took it from me and stared at it. "Register's messed up," he said too quickly. Nisha said, "Both cameras too?" Nobody answered her. We closed at 9:30. Alden locked the doors early at 9:17 after a pickup truck slowed down in the lot and he got nervous. We counted the drawer twice. It was over by $11.46, exactly the amount of her purchase. But there was still only one sale for that amount in the system. Alden wrote "register error" on the closeout sheet, then crossed it out and wrote "cash discrepancy." He told me not to talk about it to customers because people were weird and would make it weirder. I said fine because I wanted to go home. My mom picked me up that night because my car had been making a grinding noise. I didn't tell her what happened. I didn't want to hear myself explain it. The next day I had the afternoon shift. I hoped the woman would not come back, but I also needed her to. I had spent all morning thinking maybe I had mixed things up somehow. Maybe I was tired. Maybe the first transaction was some weird stress daydream, and the camera only proved I was acting strange, not that anything strange had happened. At 4:12, I went to the battery rack to straighten it. There was a 4-pack of AA batteries sitting behind the candy bars, opened at the corner. Not stolen open, just peeled slightly, like someone had tried to get one battery out and stopped. I picked it up. Written on the back in blue pen was my name, Owen, not printed, handwritten. I carried it to the office. Alden looked at it, looked at me, and then told me to throw it away. I didn't. I put it in my jacket pocket. For about 3 weeks, nothing else happened, and everyone got better at pretending. Alden had the camera system serviced. The guy said it was old but working. Nisha stopped bringing it up unless we were alone, and even then she only said things like, "You ever figure out that lady?" Which was not really a question. Then, one Sunday morning, I was shopping at a pharmacy across town for shampoo before work. It was bright out, cold and clear, nothing like that rainy night. I turned into the grocery aisle and saw the woman in the gray coat standing at the far end. Same haircut, same tired face, same blue tote bag. She was holding a half-gallon of milk in one hand and a loaf of white bread in the other. I stopped so fast that a man behind me almost bumped into me. The woman looked up. For a second, she seemed just as surprised to see me as I was to see her. Then her face went blank, the way it had in the store. She said, "Power's flickering at the house." I didn't move. She looked down at the milk and bread, confused, like she had just noticed them. Then she turned and walked away without buying anything. She went around the corner toward the pharmacy counter. I followed after a few seconds, but she wasn't there. I checked the next aisle, then the front, then the parking lot. Nothing. When I got to work that afternoon, there was a receipt on register too. It was yellowed and curled like it had been sitting in sunlight for months, but the date was that same Sunday. The time was 8:47 p.m., even though it was only 1:30 in the afternoon. Milk, bread, batteries. Total, 11.46. At the bottom, where it usually said, "Thank you for shopping Salloway Market," it said, You already did this. The light came on at 3:12 in the morning. I knew the time because my phone was charging face up on the crate I used as a nightstand, and the screen lit up when I jerked awake. Freaked awake. 3:12. Big white numbers. No notifications. No alarm. Just that time and the bedroom light over me, bright enough that I had to squint. I lived alone then in a small rented house in Millvale, Pennsylvania, a few streets up from the river. It was one of those narrow old houses with a front porch barely big enough for two chairs, a sloped backyard, and radiators that clanked like someone tapping pipes with a spoon. The bedroom was on the second floor, but the house was not large. There was my room, a tiny spare room I used for laundry, and a bathroom with a ceiling fan that rattled. It was late February, and the weather had been miserable all week. Wet snow, then rain, then freezing wind that pushed against the windows. I remember the sound of sleet hitting the glass that night. Not hard, just steady, like someone pouring rice onto the sill. For a few seconds after waking up, I thought maybe I had left the light on by accident. I had been exhausted after work. I drove a delivery truck for a medical supply company, and that day I had been out in the cold, carrying boxes up apartment stairs from 7 in the morning until after 6. I had eaten leftover pasta standing at the sink and fallen asleep before 11, but I did not sleep with the light on. I hated sleeping with any light on. Even the little standby light on the TV bothered me. I reached toward the wall beside the bed where the switch was. The switch was already down, off. I touched it with my fingertips and just sat there for a moment, still half under the blanket, staring at it. The plastic was cool. The little toggle was definitely in the off position. I flipped it up and down once. The light stayed on. That woke me up fully. I looked at the ceiling fixture. It was an ugly old dome light with a frosted glass cover and two bulbs inside. Both bulbs were on, not flickering, not dim, regular bright yellow light. I said, "What the hell?" out loud because the house felt too quiet with me not saying anything. Then the light clicked off, not faded, not blinked. Clicked like someone had used a switch. The room went black. I froze with my hands still on the wall switch. The sleet tapped against the window. The radiator gave a soft ping near the door. My eyes tried to adjust, but the room was too dark after the brightness. Then I heard breathing from the corner. It came from near the dresser, on the side of the room opposite the bed. Slow breathing. Not mine. Mine had stopped. At first, I told myself it was the radiator. The old pipes hissed sometimes when the heat came on, and if I was half asleep, maybe it sounded like breathing. That was the explanation my brain grabbed, and I held on to it hard. Then it breathed in again. A soft inhale through a nose, then out. I reached for my phone without looking away from the corner. My hand hit the charging cable, then the edge of the crate, then the phone. I knocked over a glass of water and felt it soak into the rug, but I found the phone and tapped the screen. The flashlight icon was right there. I hit it with my thumb. The corner was empty. My dresser was there with a pile of clean shirts on top. The hamper beside it, a pair of work boots on the floor, the curtain moving a little because the window leaked cold air. Nothing else. I kept the flashlight on that corner for maybe a full minute. There was no breathing now. I got out of bed and turned the bedroom light switch up and down a few times. The ceiling light did not come on. I tried the lamp on my crate. That worked, so the power was not out. I checked the hallway light. That worked too. I stood there in my boxers and socks, holding my phone like it was a weapon, feeling stupid and scared at the same time. I went downstairs and checked the breaker box in the kitchen closet. Everything looked normal. I flipped the breaker for the upstairs lights off, then on again because that was what my dad always did when he didn't know what else to do. When I went back upstairs, the bedroom light worked normally from the switch. I tried to make it a wiring problem. Old house, bad switch, loose connection. Maybe the cold made something contract. Maybe the switch was faulty and the light had somehow come on by itself. I didn't know enough about electricity to prove or disprove anything, so I picked the version that let me go back to bed. I did not sleep in the bedroom, though. I slept on the couch downstairs with the TV on low and my cat, Brindle, curled up behind my knees. Brindle was a skinny black and brown stray I had taken in the year before. He usually slept at the foot of my bed, but that night he stayed downstairs. I noticed that later. At the time, I was too tired to think about it. The next morning, everything seemed normal. The light worked. The switch worked. The corner was just a corner. I even laughed about it while brushing my teeth, not because it was funny, but because daylight made the whole thing feel embarrassing. I told my coworker Dario about the light when we were loading the truck. He said, "That's why I don't rent old places." I said, "I heard breathing too." He paused with a box in his hands. "You were dreaming." "Probably." "You live alone, right?" "Yeah." He gave me a look. "Then definitely dreaming." That was the official story for 2 days. On the third night, the same thing happened, but not exactly. I woke up at 3:12 again. This time the bedroom was dark. My phone screen was lit, showing the time, even though nothing had touched it. 3:12. The wind was pushing rain against the window, and the radiator was dead quiet. I was awake before I knew why. Then the ceiling light clicked on. The switch was still off. I didn't even reach for it this time. I could see it from where I lay. Down position. The light stayed on for about 5 seconds. Then the switch moved. I saw it move. The little toggle went from down to up on its own, slow enough that I could follow it with my eyes. It made the soft plastic snap sound when it reached the top. The light stayed on. I sat up so fast the blanket slid off me. "Hello?" I said. Nothing answered. Brindle was standing in the doorway, back arched, looking past me into the room. His ears were flat. He made a low sound I'd only heard once before when a raccoon got onto the back porch. I looked at the corner near the dresser. There was nothing there. Then the light clicked off again. The switch stayed up. In the dark, the breathing started. Same corner. Same slow inhale, same slow exhale. Brindle ran. His claws scrambled down the hall and then down the stairs. I grabbed my phone, hit the flashlight, and shined it at the dresser. Empty. But one of the drawers was open. Not all the way, just a few inches. Enough that I could see white socks inside. I knew it had not been open because I had put laundry away that evening, and I always pushed the drawers shut with my hip. It was a habit. I did not check the drawer. I did not check the closet. I put on sweatpants, grabbed my keys and coat, and left the house. I sat in my car until morning with the engine running every 20 minutes so I didn't freeze. Around 6, a neighbor named Mrs. Vorey came out to salt her steps and saw me through the windshield. She waved like it was normal that I was sitting there before sunrise. I waved back and waited until she went inside before I got out. That day, I called my landlord, Dennis. He sent an electrician named Kirk, who looked tired before he even walked in. Kirk tested the switch, took off the plate, checked the fixture, checked the breaker, and told me everything was old, but not unusual. "Could a light turn on by itself if the switch is off?" I asked. He made a face. "Not the way you're describing." "What about the switch moving?" He looked at me then. Really looked. "Moving how?" "Never mind." He tightened some wires and replaced the switch anyway. I paid him cash because Dennis said he would reimburse me later, which of course he never did. For a week, nothing happened. I slept badly, but nothing happened. I started leaving the bedroom door open, then closed, then open again. I tried sleeping with the lamp on, but that made me feel like I was waiting for something. I tried sleeping downstairs, but my back hurt after 2 nights. Eventually, exhaustion beat fear, and I went back to my bed like a normal person. The next strange thing was not the light. It was the laundry room. The spare room across from my bedroom had a washer and dryer that shook the whole floor during the spin cycle. I used it mostly to pile clothes and empty boxes. One Saturday afternoon, I went in to start a load and noticed the pull chain light was already on. I reached up to turn it off, but the chain was pulled tight, like someone was holding the other end above the ceiling. That made no sense. It hung from a bare bulb fixture. There was no other end. I touched the chain and it gave way all at once, swinging back and forth so hard it tapped the bulb. The light went out. Then, from inside the dryer, something knocked twice. I opened the dryer, empty. I was angry by then. That was the weird part. Fear came first, then anger. I remember saying no to the empty dryer. Just that. No. That night, I set up my old tablet on the dresser to record the room while I slept. I aimed it at the light switch in the corner. I plugged it in so the battery wouldn't die and used a free camera app that saved video in chunks. I slept maybe 3 hours. At 3:12, the bedroom light came on. I woke up immediately and looked at the switch. It was off. The tablet screen was black. I had left it recording with the screen dimmed but not off. Now it was completely dead. I grabbed it and it was warm, almost hot, with the battery symbol showing 0%. It had been plugged in the whole time. The breathing started before the light went off. That was new. It came from the corner, slow and steady. The light was still on, and I was looking right at the corner and I could hear someone breathing from it. There was no one there. The sound was so close to visible that my brain kept trying to make a shape out of the empty space. The shirts on the dresser, the shadow under the chair, the dark gap between the hamper and wall. I said, "Stop." The breathing stopped. The light clicked off. Something whispered from right beside the dresser. It was not a word. It was more like the start of a word, cut short. A dry little sound. I turned on my phone flashlight and left the room again. In the morning, the tablet would not turn on. I took it to a repair place near McKnight Road, and the guy behind the counter said the battery had failed. When I asked if a battery could go from full to dead while plugged in, he said, "Yeah, if it's old." He did not look very interested. I started staying at Dario's apartment some nights. I told him enough that he stopped making jokes. His girlfriend, Amaya, said maybe I was having sleep paralysis. I looked it up. Some of it fit. Waking up at night, sensing someone in the room, hearing things. But it did not explain the switch. It did not explain Brindle refusing to go upstairs after dark. It did not explain the new switch moving by itself. On a Wednesday night in March, I decided to stay home because I had an early route and all my uniforms were there. I told myself I was done being chased out of my own house. I checked every room before bed. I took photos of the bedroom switch in the off position, the empty corner, the closed dresser drawers, the laundry room, the hallway. I even checked the attic hatch with a broom handle. It was shut. I fell asleep around midnight with the lamp on. At 3:12, I woke up because the lamp clicked off. The ceiling light was already on. The switch was off again. I didn't move. I just stared at it, feeling this heavy blankness settle over me. Not panic, not exactly. More like my body had run out of reactions. Then the phone on the crate buzzed. It was a reminder. I had no reminders set for that time. The screen said, "Check the corner before it gets dark." I stared at it until the words blurred. The ceiling light went off. The breathing started from the corner. Then, in the hallway outside my bedroom, I heard my own bedroom door close. That sounds simple, but I was looking at the door. It was open. I could see the hallway beyond it. The sound came from the hallway anyway. The same wooden click. The same latch. Like the room I was in had another version of the same door somewhere else, and that one had just been shut. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The corner was empty. The doorway was open, but the light from my phone did not reach the hallway right. It stopped at the threshold, like the air outside the room had turned thick. The hall looked flat and gray, with no depth to it. I could see the bathroom door, but it seemed farther away than usual. The spare room door seemed closer. The stairs were not visible at all from that angle, even though they should have been. From the corner, someone breathed in. From the hallway, someone breathed out. I did not go into the hall. I climbed out the bedroom window onto the porch roof. That was the part people never believed, but it was true. The window stuck, and I had to shove it open with my shoulder. Cold rain blew into my face. I stepped onto the slanted little roof over the front porch in bare feet, then sat down and slid to the edge. I dropped into the wet shrubs below and twisted my ankle bad enough that I limped for 2 weeks. I got in my car and drove to a Sheetz parking lot 4 miles away. I stayed there until sunrise. When I came back, the bedroom window was closed and locked from the inside. The lamp was on. The ceiling light worked normally. The reminder on my phone was gone. I moved out at the end of that month. Dennis complained that I was breaking the lease, and I told him he could keep the deposit. I packed during the day with Dario helping, and even then, Brindle would not leave his carrier. He hissed once at the bedroom corner when we carried the mattress out. On my last trip, I went upstairs alone to check the room. It was empty except for dust marks on the floor where the furniture had been. The walls looked dirty and plain. The switch was down, off. I stood there with a box in my arms, listening to the house, traffic outside, Wind in the gutter, nothing breathing. Then the ceiling light clicked on. I looked at the switch, it was still off. I left the box in the room and walked out. The order came in at 7:38 on a Friday night, right when the rain started turning the streets shiny. I was driving for a food delivery app in Wilmington, Delaware, mostly around Trolley Square and 40 Acres. It was not my full-time job. I worked parts at a car dealership during the day, and I drove at night when I needed extra money. That month I needed it because my landlord had raised rent again, and my dog, Ozzie Pike, had decided to eat half a dish towel and cost me $380 at the emergency vet. The pickup was from a Thai place on Delaware Avenue. One pad seat U, one order of spring rolls, one Thai iced tea, no ice. Pretty normal. The drop-off was at the Marwick Apartments, a brick building I had delivered to a few times before. Old place, 6 floors, weird narrow lobby, elevator that sounded like it was being dragged upward by chains. The app said apartment 6B. I remember that clearly because the customer note said, "Please knock. Doorbell does not work." 6B, cash tip. Drivers remember cash tip the way dogs remember the word walk. The name on the order was Warren K. I parked across the street with my hazards on, tucked the bag under my jacket, and ran through the rain to the front entrance. The lobby smelled like wet coats and old carpet. There was a row of brass mailboxes on the left wall, like all scratched up around the little keyholes. I didn't look too closely then, but I noticed there were a lot of paper notices taped to them about trash pickup and pest treatment. The elevator was sitting on the first floor with the door half open. I stepped in, hit 6, and watched the numbers light up one by one. The elevator shook a little between 4 and 5, which made the Thai iced tea slosh in the cup holder. I remember thinking if the lid popped off, I was just going to walk into traffic. The 6th floor hallway was quiet. The Marwick had these long, dim hallways with brown carpet and yellow wall sconces every 20 feet. The doors were painted dark red, and each one had brass numbers screwed on crooked. When I stepped out of the elevator, 6A was on my left. 6C was a few doors down on the same side. 6B was between them. That sounds normal because it was normal. 6A, 6B, 6C. I walked to 6B and knocked. There was no peephole in the door, which I noticed because most apartments had one. Instead, there was a small round mark where maybe a peephole used to be and had been painted over. I could hear a TV inside, low, like a news anchor talking from another room. Then slow footsteps came toward the door. An old man answered. He was small and neat, with white hair combed straight back and a blue cardigan buttoned all the way up. He had thin wire glasses and a clean-shaven face. He looked tired but polite, like somebody's grandfather waiting up for a nurse to bring medication. "Evening," he said. "Delivery for Warren?" "That's me." I handed him the food and drink. His apartment smelled like dust, warm air, and something sweet, maybe pipe tobacco, even though I didn't see him smoking. Behind him I could see a narrow entryway, a little table with keys on it, and a framed picture of a woman in a garden. The TV sound kept going, but I couldn't see the screen. He took the bag carefully with both hands. "Wet night," he said. "Yeah, it's coming down pretty good. Always does when the roof acts up." I gave one of those customer service laughs. "Hope it holds." He smiled a little, then reached into his cardigan pocket and pulled out folded bills. "Here you are, Jonah." I had no name tag. The app would have shown my first name to him, so that part didn't seem strange. He gave me $8 in cash. 2 fives stuck together and 3 singles, except when I counted it in the elevator, it was 8. I remember that because I thought he had accidentally given me 13 and then felt guilty for being disappointed when it was just 8. "Thanks. I appreciate it," I said. He nodded. "You'll want to take the stairs down." I glanced back toward the elevator. "Is it out?" "Not yet." That was a weird thing to say, but people say weird things, especially older customers. I told him to have a good night. He said, "You too. Careful on the 4th." Then he shut the door. I stood there for a second, holding my phone and the insulated bag, listening to the deadbolt slide into place. The hallway light near the elevator flickered twice. I thought about taking the stairs, but didn't. I was tired, and the elevator was right there. On the way down, it stopped at the 4th floor, even though I hadn't pushed anything. The doors opened to an empty hallway. Same brown carpet, same red doors, same bad lighting. Nobody was there. I waited. The elevator made a humming sound. Then, from somewhere down that hall, I heard a short burst of laughter from a TV or radio. It cut off too cleanly, like someone had muted it. The doors stayed open. I hit the close button. Nothing happened. I hit it again, harder. Finally, the doors jerked shut and the elevator dropped to 3 so fast my stomach lifted. It caught itself with a clunk. I was already annoyed, not scared. Old buildings do old building things. I got back to the lobby, walked out into the rain, and finished my shift. Nothing else happened that night, except a guy in Ellesmere tipped me 72 cents on a sushi order. The next week, I got sent back to the Marwick. This time, it was a pizza from a place near Union Street. The drop-off was apartment 6C. The customer's name was Clea, and the note said to leave it at the door. It was a dry night, cold and windy, with leaves scraping along the curb. I remember being glad I didn't have to make small talk. When I got to the building, the lobby looked the same, except there was a guy in a knit hat taping a notice to the inside of the front door. He was maybe late 30s with a short beard and a tool belt. "Elevator working?" I asked. He looked over his shoulder. "For now." I laughed because it reminded me of Warren. The guy didn't laugh. I took the elevator to 6, same shake between 4 and 5, same ugly hallway when the doors opened. I stepped out and turned left. 6A was on the left. Then there was a blank stretch of wall. Then 6C. I stopped so suddenly the pizza box slid against my wrist. There was no 6B. I looked back toward the elevator like maybe I had turned the wrong direction. But no, the elevator was behind me, and the hallway was laid out exactly how I remembered. 6A, blank wall, 6C. The space between them was not big enough for a full apartment door, but it was exactly where I remembered the door being. There was just painted plaster, a baseboard heater, and one of those yellow wall sconces above it. I walked closer. The wall did not look new. It was the same old beige paint as the rest of the hall, with scuff marks near the floor and a hairline crack running diagonally under the light. There were no hinges, no outline, no patch where a door had been removed. I stood there holding Clea's pizza and felt stupidly embarrassed, like the hallway had caught me lying. I checked the app. Apartment 6C. I checked my delivery history from the week before. It only showed the restaurant name and customer name, not the apartment number. Some apps do that after the order closes. The old order said Warren K., Marwick Apartments, completed. I knocked on 6C, placed the pizza down, took the photo, and started to leave. The door opened behind me. A woman in workout clothes leaned out. "Thanks." "No problem," I said. Then before I could stop myself, I added, "Hey, do you know if there's a 6B? She frowned. "A what?" "Apartment 6B. She glanced toward the blank wall. "There's 6A and mine. Was there ever one between you?" She gave me that careful look people give strangers in hallways. "Not since I've lived here." "How long is that?" 4 years. I nodded like that answered something. "Sorry. Wrong building, maybe." She said, "Happens," but her face said it didn't. On the elevator ride down, I kept looking at the buttons like one of them might say something different if I stared hard enough. The 4th floor button was lit even though I had pressed lobby. The elevator stopped there again. The doors opened. This time, a man was standing right outside. He was wearing a long tan coat and holding a black umbrella even though he was inside. He looked at me, then at the pizza bag, then past me into the elevator. "Going down?" I asked. He didn't answer. He stepped back from the doors instead of getting in. The hallway light behind him flickered, and for maybe half a second, the 4th floor looked wrong. Not darker, longer. Like the hallway stretched way farther than the building should have allowed. I could see doors all the way down, too many doors, like red door after red door fading into yellow light. Then the elevator doors closed. I told myself I was overtired. I had worked 8 hours at the dealership, then driven 4 more. Hallways blur when you're tired. Buildings repeat. Maybe there was another Marwick building somewhere, and I had mixed them up. Maybe I had delivered to 6D or 6E and remembered it wrong. But I remembered 6B. I remembered the old man's cardigan. I remembered him saying, "Careful on the 4th." When I reached the lobby, the guy with the tool belt was still there, this time sorting mail into the brass boxes. "Excuse me," I said. "Do you work here?" He turned. "Maintenance." "Is there an apartment 6B? He looked annoyed before I finished the question. "No." Was there ever? You sure? He straightened up. Pretty sure. I've been here 11 years. I pointed up like an idiot. There's 6A and 6C, though. Yeah. So why no 6B? He shrugged. Old numbering. They combined units before I was born, I think. Or maybe the plans changed. I don't know. Did an old man named Warren live here? His face changed a little. What last name? I don't know. The order just said Warren K. No Warren here. You manage the building? No, but I know most of the tenants. He went back to the mailboxes. I should have left, but I didn't. Can I check something? I asked. He sighed. What? The mailboxes. He stared at me for a second, then stepped aside in a way that said he thought I was wasting his time. I scanned the little brass doors. 1A, 1C, 1D, 2A, 2C, 3A, 3C. The building had weird gaps in the numbers, but no B units anywhere on the left stack. And when I got to the 6th floor row, there was 6A, 6C, 6D. No 6B. But between 6A and 6C, there was a darker rectangle on the brass, like a label had been there for a long time and had recently been removed. It was the size of the other number plates. I touched it without thinking. The maintenance guy said, "Don't mess with the boxes." Sorry. I went back to my car and sat there with the heat blasting, searching my phone. Warren K. Marwick Apartments. Apartment 6B, Wilmington. Nothing useful came up. Just rental listings and complaints about plumbing from years ago. Then I remembered the cash tip. I kept cash tips in the center console until the end of the week. I opened it and sorted through the crumpled bills. There were singles, a 5 from a lunch delivery, quarters, gas receipts, a pen with no cap. At the bottom was an old-looking $8 stack. 2 5s stuck together and 3 singles. That did not add up to 8. It added up to 13. Same as what I thought I had counted the first night. I separated the 2 5s. They were not stuck. One was a 5. The other was not money. It was a folded piece of receipt paper cut to the same size as a bill. I unfolded it. The paper was blank on one side. On the other side, print-faded blue ink, was 6B. Please knock doorbell does not work. No restaurant name, no order number, no date. I took a photo of it. Then I put it in my glove compartment and drove home. For the next few days, I kept checking my app history, like the missing apartment number might come back. It didn't. I called support and asked if they could give me the delivery notes from a completed order. The support person clearly did not care and told me they could only verify that the order had been delivered successfully. When I asked for the address, they read the building address but not the unit. Can you see the unit? I asked. No unit listed, she said. There had to be. I'm sorry, I don't see one. That bothered me almost more than the wall. I never would have gotten to the right door without a unit number. About 2 weeks later, I got another order to the Marwick. I almost declined it, but the pay was good, and I was already nearby. It was from a diner this time. Turkey club, rice pudding, black coffee. The customer was an older woman in 3C. The lobby was empty when I came in. No maintenance guy, no tenants. The mailboxes looked the same. I glanced at the 6th floor row. There was still no 6B. I took the stairs instead of the elevator. I told myself it was for exercise. Really, I did not want to stop on the 4th again. The stairwell smelled like damp concrete and cigarettes. The lights buzzed overhead. My footsteps echoed in a normal way until I passed the 4th floor landing. There I heard a TV. Low, behind the stairwell wall. A news anchor talking from another room. I stood still with my hand on the railing. The 4th floor door had a small square window in it with wired glass. Through it, I could see the hallway. It looked normal. Short. Brown carpet. Red doors. Then someone knocked from the other side of the door. 3 polite taps. I stepped back. Nobody was visible through the window. The TV sound stopped. I kept going down to the 3rd floor, delivered the food, and left by the front stairs without looking back. When I got to my car, there was a voicemail on my phone from an unknown number. It had come in while I was inside the building, but my phone had not rung. The message was 12 seconds long. At first, there was only static. Then an old man's voice said, "Wet night." I was sitting in my car in clear weather. No rain, dry windshield, dry street. Then the same voice said, "You took the stairs this time." The message ended. I drove straight home and played it once for my roommate, Tevin. He listened with his eyebrows pulled together and asked who was messing with me. I told him I didn't know. He said it was probably someone from the app spoofing me or some tenant who thought it was funny. That sounded possible in the daytime. At night, it sounded less possible. A few days after that, I went back to the Marwick when I wasn't working. I parked across the street around noon when things felt safer. A woman was outside smoking under the awning, and I asked if the landlord was around. She pointed me to a small office in the back of the lobby. The landlord was a tired woman named Marisol Batty. She had reading glasses on a chain and a desk covered in labeled folders. I told her I was a delivery driver and had a question about an apartment number. She seemed annoyed but not rude. "There's no 6B, she said before I finished. "I know, that's what everyone keeps saying. Because there isn't." "Was there ever?" She pulled a folder from a cabinet without looking at the label, like she had answered this before. She opened a floor plan and turned it toward me. The sixth floor showed 6A, storage, 6C, 6D. Between 6A and 6C was a rectangle marked storage, pipe access. No apartment. "People ask about 6B?" I said. She looked at me over her glasses. "Once in a while, usually delivery mix-ups." "Has anyone named Warren lived here?" "No." "You checked?" "I know my tenants." "What about before you?" She shut the folder. "My family has owned this building since 1989. The room felt too warm. I thanked her and left. On my way out, I checked the mailboxes again. The darker rectangle between 6A and 6C was gone. Not faded. Gone. The brass was evenly scratched like it had never had anything there. I stood there long enough that Marisol came out of the office and asked if I needed something else. I said no. I stopped delivering to that building. Anytime an order came in for the Marwick, I declined it, even if it hurt my acceptance rate. For a while, that was enough. The receipt paper stayed in my glove compartment. The voicemail disappeared from my phone after an update, or at least that was when I noticed it gone. Then, in May, I sold my Corolla to a guy from Newark and cleaned it out before he picked it up. The glove compartment was mostly junk. Registration papers, napkins, ketchup packets, tire pressure gauge, the receipt paper from 6B. Except it was not blank on the back anymore. There was handwriting on it in blue pen, shaky but readable. You forgot the T. I stood in my driveway with the passenger door open and read it over and over. The Thai iced tea from that first order. No ice. I had handed it to him. I remembered the cup holder. I remembered trying not to spill it in the elevator. I remembered him taking the bag and drink together. I turned the paper over. The printed side still said, 6B, please, knock doorbell, does not work. That night, after the guy drove off in my old car, I got a notification from the delivery app. It was not an order, just one of those automated messages asking me to rate a past delivery. "How was your delivery to Warren K?" Under it was the building address for the Marwick. The date was that Friday night in the rain. The apartment line was blank. I tapped the notification, but the app opened to the normal home screen. There was no rating request, no order details, nothing waiting for me. A few weeks later, I drove past the Marwick on my way to pick up dinner for myself. I didn't mean to slow down, but I did. A light was on in the 6th floor hallway. From the street, I could see the row of windows along that side of the building. Most had curtains or blinds. One narrow section between two apartment windows had never had a window before, just brick. That night, there was a window there, warm yellow light behind it. An old man stood at the glass in a blue cardigan, looking down at the street. I kept driving. I was brushing my teeth when my reflection stopped before I did. It was a little after midnight on a Wednesday in late April, and rain had been tapping against the bathroom window for hours. I lived alone in a second-floor apartment above a closed framing shop in Olympia, Washington, on a block with a coffee place, a vape shop, and a bus shelter that always had wet leaves stuck around the curb. My apartment was narrow and old, with slanted floors and windows that rattled whenever buses went by. The bathroom was the worst room in it. The sink was tiny, the fan sounded like a lawnmower, and the mirror was one of those cheap medicine cabinet mirrors with rust spots along the bottom edge. It had a little gap on the right side where the cabinet door didn't quite shut flush. I was exhausted that night. I worked front desk at a veterinary clinic, and we had been slammed since lunch. A golden retriever had eaten a sock, a woman had cried because her cat needed dental surgery, and my coworker Tamsin had called out, so I had spent half the day answering phones while trying to check people in. By the time I got home, I ate crackers and peanut butter for dinner and fell asleep on the couch with my shoes still on. I woke up around 11:40 because my cat, Juniper Pike, was sitting on my chest and staring at the hallway. She did that sometimes when the upstairs pipes ticked, so I moved her, took out my contacts, and went to brush my teeth. That was when it happened. I was brushing the left side of my mouth, looking half asleep at my own face, when my reflection lowered the toothbrush. I kept brushing. It was only about a second, maybe less, but it was enough that I noticed. My hand was still moving. Foam was still building at the corner of my mouth. But in the mirror, my reflected hand had stopped near my chin. Then it caught up. The reflection raised the toothbrush again and matched me like nothing had happened. I froze with the toothbrush still in my mouth. My first thought was that I was more tired than I realized. Mirrors did not lag. That was not a thing. I leaned closer and blinked hard. My reflection blinked too. I moved the toothbrush slightly. It moved. I raised my left hand. It raised the reflected right one. Normal. I let out a little laugh through toothpaste foam because the alternative was standing in my bathroom at midnight believing my mirror had buffered. I finished brushing, rinsed, and went to bed. The next morning, the bathroom looked normal. The mirror was streaky. My towel was on the floor because Juniper liked to drag it down and sleep on it. My toothbrush was in the cup. Nothing weird. I forgot about it for most of the day. Then that evening, I got home from work and found the bathroom light on. I always turned it off. I was obsessive about it because the fan and the light were on the same switch, and the fan made the whole apartment buzz. It was on when I opened the front door. I could hear it before I even took my coat off. I walked into the bathroom, annoyed, and flipped the switch down. The fan stopped. The light went out. In the mirror, the light stayed on for a second longer. Not in the room. The actual bathroom went dark. But in the mirror, the bathroom behind my reflected shoulder stayed lit for one extra beat. I saw the yellow bulb over the shower curtain. I saw my reflected face still bright. Then it went dark too. I stood there with my hand on the switch. Okay, I said out loud. I turned the light back on. The mirror matched. Off again. Matched. On. Matched. I did it 5 times and felt stupid each time. That night, I called my younger sister Della while I made pasta. I tried to tell her in a casual way. Have you ever been so tired your reflection looks delayed? She was quiet for a second. What? Like in a mirror. You move and it moves a little late. Were you high? No. Were you drunk? No. Then I don't like that. That was Della. She believed in nothing until it scared her, and then she believed in everything too much. It was probably the bathroom light, I said. How would the bathroom light delay your face? I don't know. Bad wiring. Bad wiring doesn't do that, Mara. I hated when she used my name like that, like she was already worried. I changed the subject and we talked about our mom's birthday plans for 10 minutes. After I hung up, I avoided the bathroom until I couldn't anymore. Nothing happened that night. Nothing happened the next morning either. The second time it happened clearly was 2 nights later. It was a foggy night, which sounds dramatic, but it was just normal coastal spring weather there. Fog rolled in after rain and sat low over the street. From my kitchen window, the stoplights looked smeared and soft, and I could hear tires on wet pavement without seeing many cars. I was getting ready for bed, brushing my teeth again. I had made a point not to stare too hard at the mirror because I didn't want to train myself into seeing things. I looked down at the sink, at the little blue chip in the porcelain, at the toothpaste cap I had dropped near the faucet. Then I looked up. My reflection stopped brushing a second before I did. This time it did not catch up. It lowered the toothbrush. I kept brushing for maybe 2 more strokes before my body understood what my eyes were seeing. Then I stopped too. In the mirror, my reflection smiled. Not a big smile. Just the corners of my mouth pulling up with toothpaste on my chin. My real mouth was hanging open around the toothbrush. Foam was sliding toward my wrist. I could feel my lips stretched in surprise, not smiling. The reflection kept smiling. I stared at it. It raised one finger to its lips, like it wanted me to stay quiet. I spit toothpaste into the sink without looking away, and because my mouth was so dry, it came out badly and splattered the faucet. The reflection did not spit. It kept one finger against its lips and watched me with my own eyes. I stepped backward and hit the toilet with my leg. The reflection stayed close to the mirror, still leaning over the sink. Then the bathroom light flickered. When it steadied, everything was normal again. I was standing there in the mirror with a toothbrush in my hand, toothpaste on my chin, eyes too wide. No smile, no finger, no delay. I left the bathroom without rinsing and sat on the edge of my bed until my legs stopped feeling weak. Juniper was under the bed. I could see her green eyes reflecting when I turned my phone flashlight on. She would not come out, even when I shook the treat bag. I slept with the lamp on. The next morning, I checked the mirror like that would prove anything. I opened the medicine cabinet. Inside were my allergy pills, floss, nail clippers, bandages, an old bottle of cough syrup, and the spare toothbrush I used to clean grout. Normal junk. I ran my fingers along the back of the cabinet. Nothing loose. I checked behind the mirror as much as I could without ripping it off the wall. There was no trick. At work, I made mistakes all day. I scheduled a corgi named Bexley for a follow-up on the wrong date. I charged a man twice for flea meds and had to reverse it. My manager, Viv, asked if I was sick, and I said I hadn't slept well. On my lunch break, I searched things like reflection delay, tired, and mirror hallucination stress. The results were useless. Eye strain, migraines, sleep deprivation, carbon monoxide, anxiety. I bought a carbon monoxide detector from the hardware store after work. It never went off. For a while, I used the hallway mirror instead of the bathroom one. It was small and oval and hung by the front door. I brushed my teeth in the kitchen sink and used my phone camera to check my hair. I told myself that was safer because I wasn't feeding the fear. Then I started noticing small things in the hallway mirror. Not big movements, just wrong timing. I would pass by with my work bag, and the reflected strap would swing after the real strap had already stopped. I would turn away, and in the corner of my eye, the reflection would still be facing forward for half a breath longer. Once, I waved my hand in front of it like an idiot, and for 3 waves, it matched me. On the 4th, it raised the wrong hand. I took the mirror down and put it in the closet. That made me feel better for about an hour. That night, I brushed my teeth in the kitchen, facing the wall. The window over the sink was dark because it was after midnight again. I could see a weak reflection in it anyway, layered over the parking lot lights outside. Me in my oversized clinic sweatshirt, the cabinets behind me, the little hanging plant Della had given me that I kept forgetting to water. I looked down and brushed fast. In the window, my reflection stood still. I could see it even while looking down, just above the sink line. It was not brushing. Its arms were at its sides. I dropped the toothbrush. It hit the sink with a hard plastic clack. The reflection in the window raised one finger to its lips. I turned the kitchen light off so fast I knocked over the dish soap. The window went black. I stood in the dark kitchen, breathing through my nose because my mouth was full of mint foam and panic. Juniper meowed once from the living room, a low, confused sound. I did not sleep in the apartment that night. I drove to Della's place in Tacoma at 1:15 in the morning and told her I had a water leak because I could not make myself say the mirror thing out loud again. She let me sleep on her couch and complained about it the next morning, but softly. I stayed there 2 nights. When I came back, my apartment smelled stale, like the heat had been on too long. The carbon monoxide detector still showed normal. The bathroom was clean because I had wiped the sink before leaving. The hallway mirror was still in the closet. The bathroom mirror had a handprint on it. It was small, my size, with fingers spread. Not on the outside. I know what fingerprints look like on glass. This was not like that. It was behind the mirror surface somehow, dull and foggy inside the reflection. When I touched the glass, it felt smooth and dry. I sprayed it with cleaner and wiped it until my arm hurt. The handprint stayed. I called my landlord, Mr. Palchak, and told him the medicine cabinet mirror was damaged and I wanted to replace it myself. He said fine, as long as I didn't mess up the wall. I bought a new mirror from a home store that evening, one of those plain, frameless rectangles. I took the old medicine cabinet down with a screwdriver and set it in the hallway. Behind it was just a rectangular hole, some old plaster dust, and a pencil mark from whoever installed it years before. No wires. No empty space, no hidden anything. I carried the medicine cabinet outside to the dumpster. As I lifted it, the mirror caught the gray evening light and I saw myself in it, not the version holding the cabinet. A version of me standing in the bathroom in my clinic sweatshirt with wet hair and toothpaste on my chin. She smiled. I dropped the cabinet so hard the mirror cracked from one corner to the middle. A man walking his dog across the alley stopped and asked if I was okay. The dog, a shaggy brown thing with a red bandana, pulled away from the dumpster and whined. "I'm fine," I said. The man did not look convinced, but he kept walking. I put the cracked cabinet in the dumpster without looking into it again. For 3 days after I installed the new mirror, nothing happened. I brushed my teeth quickly with the bathroom door open and all the lights on. The new mirror was clean and flat. It reflected me normally. I started to relax a little in a careful way, like leaning weight onto a sore ankle. Then on Sunday morning, Della came over with coffee and a bag of pastries. It was bright out, one of those pale spring mornings after rain when everything outside looked washed. She used my bathroom while I was feeding Juniper in the kitchen. I heard the sink run. Then I heard it stop. Then Della said very calmly, "Mara?" I went to the bathroom doorway. She was standing in front of the new mirror, hands wet, staring at her reflection. "What?" I said. She didn't answer right away. Her reflection blinked. Della did not. Then Della turned to look at me, but her reflection kept looking straight ahead. I grabbed her arm and pulled her out of the bathroom. She didn't fight me. We stood in the hallway, and her face had gone pale in a way I had never seen on her. "I thought you were exaggerating," she said. I wasn't. "What is wrong with your apartment?" "I don't know." She looked past me toward the bathroom. It smiled at me. That was the first time I heard someone else say it. We left the apartment for the day and walked around downtown in the drizzle because neither of us wanted to sit inside. She told me to move. I told her my lease had 4 months left and I couldn't afford to break it. She said she would help. I said I would think about it. We said a lot of practical things because practical things made it feel like there was a handle on it. That night, I covered the bathroom mirror with a towel. I used painter's tape along the edges so it couldn't slip. Then I covered the microwave door, the dark TV screen, the glass frames on my wall, even the little reflective strip on my toaster. It took almost an hour, and by the end, my apartment looked like I was preparing to paint or lose my mind. At 2:04 a.m., I woke up to the sound of the bathroom sink running. I had slept on the couch with Juniper under the blanket beside my legs. She was awake too, body stiff, ears forward. The water ran for maybe 10 seconds, then it stopped. I sat up, not breathing much. A soft brushing sound started, toothbrush against teeth. Slow, steady, wet. I did not get up. The brushing went on for too long, a full minute, then 2. It had a rhythm that was almost mine, but not quite. Scrape, pause, scrape, scrape. Rinse, spit. Then a knock came from the bathroom mirror. Not the bathroom door, the mirror. A light tap on glass, then another. I stayed on the couch until sunrise with my phone in my hand and Juniper pressed against my side. When daylight came, I walked to the bathroom. The towel was still taped over the mirror. There was toothpaste foam dried along the bottom edge of it. I packed a bag that morning and stayed with Della again. I moved out 2 weeks later with help from her and a guy from work named Soren, who owned a pickup. I did not explain much to him. I just said the place had plumbing issues and I wanted out. On moving day, we kept all the mirrors covered. Soren joked once about vampires, then stopped when neither of us laughed. The last thing I took down was the towel over the bathroom mirror. I did it because I didn't want Mr. Palchak charging me for leaving tape on the glass. The new mirror was clean. My reflection looked tired and normal. I stared at it for a few seconds, waiting. Nothing smiled, nothing lagged, nothing raised a finger. I started peeling the tape from the top edge. My reflection did not move. I stopped. In the mirror, I was still peeling tape. My real hand was frozen at the corner. The reflection lowered its hand and leaned closer to the glass. It had toothpaste on its chin. It raised one finger to its lips. From the hallway behind me, Della called, "Mara, you coming?" In the mirror, my reflection looked past my shoulder and smiled wider. I walked out and left the towel hanging from one strip of tape. I first noticed the red car just after I passed the Tesco roundabout outside Penrith. It was a Monday night in February, wet and cold, with that thin, misty rain that made the road shine under every streetlight. I was driving back from Carlisle after a late seminar. I was in my second year at uni doing environmental science, and I had stayed behind to finish a group presentation because one of the lads in my group, Reese Tovey, had somehow deleted half our slides and then gone quiet in the chat. By the time I left campus, it was almost 10:30. I still had an hour and a bit to get back to my mom's place near Kendall, where I was staying that week because the heating in my flat had packed in. My car was a silver 2009 Ford Fiesta with one working speaker and a heater that only blew properly if I hit the dashboard above the glove box. I had a half-empty bottle of Lucozade in the cup holder and a packet of salt and vinegar crisps on the passenger seat. Nothing about the night felt strange at first. It was just one of those boring drives where you're tired but not tired enough to pull over. I had the radio low, some phone-in show where people were arguing about potholes. The motorway was quiet, and by the time I came off near Penrith, there were only a few lorries and the odd car going the other way. The red car was behind me when I left the roundabout. It was maybe 5 or 6 car lengths back. Small hatchback, bright red, headlights a bit too white. I noticed it because it took the same exit as me, but that wasn't weird. Plenty of people use that road. I drove past the retail park, past the closed McDonald's with the lights still on, and out toward the darker stretch. The red car stayed behind me. Again, not weird yet. People head the same direction. I told myself I was only noticing it because the roads were empty. If there had been 10 cars around us, I wouldn't have cared. But because it was just me and this one red car, every turn felt like a decision. I was not going straight home. My usual route would have taken me through Shap and then down toward Kendall, but there had been a diversion earlier that week because of roadworks, so my sat-nav was taking me through smaller roads. I knew the area well enough, but not every lane, the kind of roads where hedges came right up to the edge, and every bend looked like the last one. The red car followed me through the first village. I slowed to 30. It slowed to 30. I sped up when the national speed limit sign came. It kept the same distance. I told myself to stop being dramatic. I even said it out loud. It's just someone driving home. Then I turned left, where the sat-nav told me to. The red car turned left too. That was the first time I felt something tighten in my chest. The road narrowed almost immediately. There were no houses, just stone walls, dark fields, and patches of fog sitting low in the dips. My headlights lit up wet tarmac and bare branches. The red car's headlights stayed in my rearview mirror, steady and bright. I turned the radio off. The quiet made the car feel smaller. I checked my mirrors every few seconds. The red car never got closer, but it never fell back either. It held the exact same distance in a way that started to feel deliberate. Not like a normal driver adjusting speed, more like it was tied to me. I called my friend Millie because she was usually awake late. She answered with, "You better not be asking about the presentation." "I think someone's following me," I said. That made her stop laughing at whatever she had been watching. "What do you mean?" "A red car. Been behind me since Penrith." "Are you sure it's the same car?" "Pretty sure." "What road are you on?" "I don't know. Somewhere near Shap, I think." "Very helpful, Kieran." I glanced at the sat-nav. "It says Bampton Road in like 2 miles. "Don't go home," she said. "Go somewhere lit." "I know." "Can you see the driver?" "No, headlights are too bright." "Turn randomly. See if they follow." I had already been thinking that. The next junction came up on the right, a narrow lane with no sign except one of those white arrows pointing to a farm. I indicated late and turned. The red car turned right behind me. Millie heard me swear. "Still there?" she asked. "Yeah." "Call the police." "Not yet, Kieran. I don't even know where I am." "Share your location with me." I did, or tried to. The signal kept dropping between 1 bar and nothing. The location circle on the map jumped around like it couldn't decide which road I was on. For a few seconds it showed me driving through a field. The lane twisted downhill, water ran along the edges, and my tires hissed through shallow puddles. I passed a dark farmhouse with one upstairs window lit, then a row of wheelie bins, then nothing again. The red car stayed with me. I took another left, then a right. Then I ignored the sat-nav when it told me to turn around and went straight down a road marked unsuitable for heavy goods. The red car followed every turn. It never hesitated. That was the part that bothered me most. It did not brake hard or drift wide like someone surprised by a sudden turn. It just followed, smooth and calm, always 5 or 6 lengths back. Millie was still on the phone, quiet now. "What are they doing?" she asked. "Nothing, just following." "Can you pull over and let them pass?" "I don't want to." "What if they're just annoyed?" "Then they can be annoyed behind me." I tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. A few minutes later, I passed a little sign for a village I didn't recognize. The road opened slightly, and there were houses on one side, all dark except for porch lights. I saw a bus stop, a notice board, and a small church with a yellow lamp over the door. I slowed to 20 and pulled over beside the church gate, leaving plenty of room for the red car to go around. It did not go around. It stopped behind me. Not right behind, not close enough to be aggressive. Same distance as before. Its headlights filled my mirrors. I could not see the driver at all, only white glare on the wet rear window. Millie whispered, "Are they stopping?" "Yeah. Drive." I did. I pulled away too fast, and my tires slipped for half a second on the wet road. The red car pulled away after me. My hands were sweating on the wheel. I decided I needed a petrol station, somewhere with cameras and people. I saw one on the sat-nav about 12 minutes away, a 24-hour place near the A6. I set it as the destination and followed the blue line, even though the sat-nav kept lagging and correcting itself. The red car followed. That stretch felt longer than 12 minutes. The road went through open fields, then trees, then another little village where every window was black. At one point, I passed a speed camera sign, and the sat-nav made the same warning sound 3 times in a row. Ding, ding, ding. Same exact tone, spaced perfectly, even though there was only one camera sign. My dashboard clock said 11:18. A minute later, it said 11:18 again. I tapped it with my finger like that would help. It changed to 11:19. Millie said, "What was that?" "What? You went quiet." "I'm fine." "You don't sound fine." The red car's headlights dipped behind me as we went down a hill. For a second, I thought it had fallen back. Then, in the rearview mirror, I saw something that made my stomach turn. There were 2 red cars behind me. One was 5 or 6 lengths back, where it had always been. The other was farther behind it, coming around the bend with the same white headlights. I blinked hard and looked again. Only one red car. I asked Millie, "Did I say anything just then?" "No? Why?" "I thought I saw 2 of them. Kieran, called the police. I'm nearly at the petrol station." I could see the lights ahead by then, bright white and green through the drizzle. It sat off a roundabout with a small shop and 4 pumps under a canopy. There was a lorry parked along the side and 1 car at pump 3. I felt relief so sharp it almost made me dizzy. I indicated and turned into the petrol station. The red car followed me to the entrance. Then it disappeared from my mirror. It didn't turn away. It didn't pass. 1 second the headlights were there at the edge of the road, lining up behind me. Then I drove under the canopy lights and checked the mirror again, and the road behind me was empty. I pulled into a space by the shop instead of a pump and sat there with the engine running. Millie said, "Are you there?" "Yeah." "Where's the car?" "I don't know." "Go inside." I unbuckled, grabbed my phone, and looked across the forecourt. That was when I saw it. A red hatchback was parked beside the air machine near the edge of the station. Same bright red, same shape. Headlights on, shining at the wall beside the bins. It was already there, not pulling in, not moving. Parked. I sat there staring at it while my brain tried to make it into a different car. There had to be loads of red hatchbacks. It was dark. I had been scared. Headlights all looked similar, but this one had the same dented front number plate. I had noticed it in my mirror when it stopped behind me by the church, a little bent on the left side. Same black trim around the windows, same white headlights. Its engine was not running. I could tell because there was no exhaust steam in the cold air. My Fiesta had a cloud coming out behind it. The lorry had a cloud. The red car had nothing. Just headlights on, engine cold, sitting there like it had been parked for hours. I got out slowly. The cold hit me hard after the heater. Rain speckled my face. The forecourt smelled like diesel and wet concrete. "Don't go near it," Millie said through the phone. "I'm not." I went into the shop. The cashier was a man in his 50s with a gray beard and a name badge that said Naveed. He was restocking chewing gum behind the counter. "You all right?" he asked, probably because I looked like I had run there. There's a red car outside, I said. He glanced toward the window. Okay. Did you see when it pulled in? He leaned a little to look past me. That one by the air? Yeah, it's been there. How long? He shrugged. Since before I came back from break, 20 minutes maybe. I looked at my phone. 11:22. That wasn't possible. 20 minutes ago, it had been behind me on a road 10 miles away. Is someone with it? I asked. Not that I saw. Can you check cameras? He gave me a look. Not rude, just tired. Why? I think it was following me. That changed his face enough that he stopped messing with the gum. He came around the counter and walked to the window with me. Wait, we both looked at the red car. Headlights on, empty seats, no movement. Naveed said, "Wait here." He went into the back room. Through the open door, I could see a small monitor with camera feeds, but not clearly. He was back there maybe 30 seconds. When he came out, he looked more annoyed than concerned. "Cameras are acting up," he said. "How?" Forecourt keeps jumping. It shows the car, then no car, then car again. "Can I see?" "No." He said it too quickly. Millie was quiet on the phone. I had forgotten she was still there until she said, "Ask him to call someone." Before I could, the red car's headlights went off. The station seemed darker instantly, even under the canopy lights. Naveed and I both stared. Then the headlights came back on. For 1 second, there was someone sitting in the driver's seat. I saw only a shape, head and shoulders, facing forward, hands maybe on the wheel. Then the light flickered, not the car lights, but the shop window reflection, and the seat was empty again. Naveed took a step back from the glass. I said, "You saw that." He didn't answer. A woman came out of the toilets at the side of the shop and walked past us carrying a packet of biscuits. She looked from me to Naveed and said, "Everything all right?" Naveed said, "Fine." But he locked the automatic door after she left. I stayed in the shop for almost 40 minutes. I called my mom and told her I was tired and had pulled over, which was true, but not the whole truth. She wanted to come get me. I said no because I didn't want her on those roads. Eventually, Naveed walked me outside and stood by the door while I got in my car. The red car was still parked by the air machine. The headlights were off now. As I reversed, my headlights swept across its windscreen. There was frost or condensation on the inside of the glass, a dull gray film. Written in it, backwards from my angle, were 3 words. "Stay off back roads." I stopped reversing. Then I blinked and the words were gone. I drove home on the main roads only. Millie stayed on the phone the whole way, even though neither of us said much. Nothing followed me. No red car, no strange turns, no clock freezing. When I got home, my mom was awake in the kitchen with her dressing gown on. She had made tea she wasn't drinking. I told her a car had followed me, and I had got scared. She hugged me, then started asking practical questions. Number plate? Make? Model? Did I call police? Was I sure it was the same car? I could not answer most of them. The next morning, I called the petrol station to ask about the car. A different worker answered. He put me on hold, then came back and said there had been no red car left overnight. Nothing had been towed. No incident in the log. When I asked for Naveed, he said there was no Naveed working there. I thought I had misheard the name. Maybe the badge said Naveed or Neem. I described him. The worker said, "We don't have anyone like that." I drove back in daylight 2 days later because I needed to know. The station looked normal. Same pumps, same little shop, same air machine by the bins. Inside, the counter was in the same place, but behind it there was no doorway to a back room where the camera monitor had been. Just a wall of cigarettes and lottery tickets. I bought a bottle of water so I didn't look like I was just wandering around, then asked the woman at the till if the cameras had been down Monday night. She said she didn't know. She had only been there since Wednesday. "Does a guy named Naveed work here?" She shook her head. "Not here." I nodded and left. On the way out, I looked at the air machine. There was a wet rectangle on the ground beside it, like a car had been parked there in the rain and recently moved. The rest of the concrete was dry under the weak winter sun. I went home by the main road again. A week later, I was cleaning out my Fiesta because my mom said it smelled like old crisps. Under the passenger seat, I found a petrol station receipt. It was damp around the edges, even though the inside of my car was dry. No items listed. No card number. Just the station name, the date of that Monday night, and the time, 11 p.m. Under that, where the pump number should have been, it said Already here, I put it in the glove box. I still used the same routes after that, but never at night if I could help it. When I had late seminars, I slept on Millie's sofa or waited until morning. People acted like I was being dramatic, and after a while, I stopped explaining. About a month later, I came out of the library after a study session and found a note under my windscreen wiper. It was folded once, held down by a smear of rainwater. There were no words inside, just a small pencil drawing of a red hatchback seen from behind with its headlights shining backward. I stayed late that Thursday because my Year 6 class had turned in their practice essays, and I had promised myself I would not drag them home again. The school was quiet by then, in the heavy way schools get after everyone leaves. During the day, St. Bridget's Primary in Chatham sounded like chairs scraping, trainers squeaking, children shouting through the corridors, and someone always coughing. After 5, it became a different building. The radiators clicked, the pipes knocked behind the walls. The automatic hand dryers in the toilets sometimes went off for no reason, and then stopped like they had remembered nobody was there. It was raining outside, a steady gray November rain that made the playground shine under the security lights. My classroom was on the second floor at the end of the east corridor, next to the art room and across from the small intervention room we called the Nest, because someone had painted birds on the door years ago. The corridor lights were motion activated and usually annoying. They snapped on too bright when you passed under them and went off if you sat still too long. I was at my desk with a stack of papers, a red pen, and a cup of tea that had gone cold. My name was Miss Vale to the children, but my actual name was Elodie Val. I was 32, tired most of the time, and halfway through a packet of ginger biscuits I had stolen from the staff room cupboard. My classroom smelled like dry erase markers and wet coats, even though the coats had all gone home hours earlier. At 5:43, I heard the cleaners downstairs. One of them was humming, and there was the dull rolling sound of a bin being dragged over the tiles. That made me feel less alone, so I kept working. I marked a paragraph about deforestation, wrote good point, explained further for the 100th time, and tried not to look at the clock. At 5:58, the cleaning sounds stopped. I noticed because the silence that followed was too complete. No bin, no humming, no voices on the radios they usually clip to their belts, just the rain against the windows and the hum of the projector I had forgotten to switch off. I leaned back and listened. Nothing. Then the hallway light outside my door clicked off. It was not supposed to do that if someone was nearby. The motion sensor was directly above my classroom door. If I shifted in my chair too much, it usually turned the corridor light back on through the glass panel. I looked up from the essays and saw the strip of corridor outside go dim. Then the next light clicked off. It was farther down the hall toward the stairs. Then the next. Click, click, click. I sat still with my red pen in my hand, watching the darkness move away from my room, one section at a time. It was like someone was walking down the corridor, turning off switches, except there were no switches. They were sensor lights. They turned off after no movement, all at once usually, not one by one in a line. The last light at the far end clicked off, and the corridor went dark, except for the green glow of the fire exit sign. I checked the clock on my laptop. 6 p.m. exactly. For some reason that bothered me more than the lights. Not 5:59, not 6:01. 6 on the dot. I told myself it was the system. Old building, bad sensors, timer setting, something like that. We had problems with the heating, the Wi-Fi, the back gate, the photocopier, the toilets in the Year 3 corridor. A row of lights acting up should not have felt personal. I pushed my chair back and stood up. The classroom light stayed on. The projector fan hummed. The rain kept tapping the windows. Everything in the room looked normal, but I felt suddenly aware of all the small things children had left behind. A purple hair clip under table 4, a jumper on the reading chair, a half-finished drawing of a dragon stuck to the whiteboard with a magnet. I walked to the door and opened it. The corridor light above me snapped on. Then the next one down flickered on. Then the next. For half a second I relaxed, because that was what they were meant to do. Then, at the far end of the corridor, I saw a child walking away from me. She was small, maybe 9 or 10, with a navy school cardigan and gray skirt. Her hair was brown and tied back in two low plaits. She had one hand trailing along the wall as she walked, like children do when they are bored. Her shoes made soft taps on the floor. "Hello?" I called. She did not stop. My first thought was that one of the after-school club children had been left behind. That happens sometimes, although not on the second floor. My second thought was that it was one of the staff members' children. My third thought was that I was going to have to phone someone, and it would become a safeguarding issue, and I was too tired for paperwork. "Excuse me," I said louder. "You shouldn't be up here." The child stopped near the fire doors. The light above her flickered, then she turned around. It was me, not adult me. Me at about 10 years old. I knew it before I could make sense of it. Same narrow face, same straight brown hair, same stubborn fringe I had cut myself the summer before year 5, same small dark mole under the left eye. She wore the old St. Bridget's uniform too, the one from before they changed the badge. Navy cardigan, white polo, gray skirt. I had gone to this school. I had walked that corridor as a child. I had not worn that uniform in more than 20 years. She stood there under the flickering light and looked straight at me. I did not scream. I did not run. I just stood in my classroom doorway with my mouth partly open and my hands still on the handle, because my brain could not decide what to do with what I was seeing. The child raised one hand, not a wave, more like she was showing me something. There was red pen on her fingers. I looked down at my own hand. My red pen was uncapped. Ink had leaked onto the side of my index finger where I had been gripping it too hard. When I looked up again, she was walking away. "Wait," I said. She pushed through the fire doors at the end of the corridor. The doors did not make a sound. That was wrong. Those doors were heavy and complained every time anyone used them. They made a rubbery groan and then banged if you didn't hold them. She passed through like they weighed nothing. I stepped into the hall. The light above me clicked off. Then the next one. The darkness started moving toward me this time. Click, click, click. I backed into my classroom and shut the door. For a few seconds, I just listened. My own breathing sounded too loud. The projector hummed behind me. The lights outside the classroom door were dark again. I grabbed my phone from the desk and called the school office, even though I knew nobody would answer after hours. It rang and rang. Then the office voicemail picked up with Mrs. Allard's cheerful recorded voice saying the school was closed and to ring back during office hours. I called the site manager, Mr. Priest. No answer. I called my friend Hannah, who taught year 2 and lived 10 minutes away. She answered with, "Please tell me you're not still marking." "There's a child in the building," I said. "What?" "I saw a child upstairs." "Call reception." "Nobody's there." "Is it after school club?" "They left ages ago." "Do you know who it is?" I looked at the classroom door and did not answer. "Elodie? I thought I recognized her." "Okay, go downstairs. Don't wander around alone." That was sensible. I picked up my keys, laptop, and coat. Then I noticed something on the top essay. A red mark that I had not written. It was a circle around one sentence in a boy named Callum's essay. His handwriting was large and slanted. The sentence said, "When trees are gone, places remember what used to be there." I stared at it for a moment. Then there was a knock at my classroom window. Not the door, the window. My classroom was on the second floor. I turned very slowly. Rain streaked the glass. The window reflected the classroom lights, the hanging paper planets, the rows of tables. Behind all that, outside in the dark, a small hand was pressed flat to the glass, child-sized. Then it slid down, squeaking faintly, and disappeared below the sill. I left the room. I did not lock the door. I just walked quickly into the corridor and toward the stairs. The lights came on above me as I moved, but slower than usual. Each one clicked on half a second after I had already stepped under it, leaving me walking into darkness and being lit from behind. At the fire doors, I stopped. Through the little square window in the left door, I could see the stairwell beyond, but it did not look right. There should have been a landing, then a turn, then the stairs down to the first floor. Instead, I saw another corridor, long and dim with blue classroom doors and a row of coat pegs along one wall. It looked like the infant corridor from the old part of the school, the way it had looked when I was a pupil. The walls were painted pale yellow instead of cream. There were paper leaves stapled to a display board. One of them had my name on it in a child's handwriting. LODV. I blinked, and the stairwell was back. I pushed through the doors hard enough that they banged. The noise made me feel better because at least that was normal. I hurried down the stairs. On the first floor landing, I heard children laughing somewhere below. Not loud, not playground laughter, more like the muffled sound of a class lining up outside an assembly hall. I stopped again. It was 6 o'clock in the evening. There were no children in the building. The laughing stopped all at once. Then a girl's voice said from below, "Miss Vale?" I gripped the handrail. Another voice, an adult one, called from the same direction, "Elodie, come along now." That voice belonged to Mrs. Fenner, my Year 5 teacher. She had retired when I was 12. She had probably been dead for years. I didn't know. I hadn't thought about her in ages. But I knew the voice. Soft, clipped, always sounding a little disappointed. I went back up one step without meaning to. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a text from Hannah. "Are you out?" I typed, "Coming now." The message would not send. The little circle spun and spun. From the bottom of the stairs, someone started walking up. Slow steps, child steps. I turned and went back through the fire doors onto the second floor, because fear does not always choose the smartest direction. The corridor lights were on now, all of them, bright and buzzing. At the far end, outside my classroom, the little girl stood waiting. She held my red pen. I did not remember dropping it, but I must have, or maybe I hadn't. I looked at my hand. Empty. She pointed the pen at the door of the nest, the small intervention room. When I was 10, that room had been called the quiet room, and I had hated it. I had been sent there once after a fight with a girl named Priya Nand, who said my dad only came to parents' evening because my mom made him. I shoved her. Not hard, but enough. Mrs. Fenner made me sit in that room alone until I calmed down. I remembered something else then, something I had not thought about in years. The lights had gone off while I was in there. I had sat alone in the dark for maybe 3 minutes, maybe 10, too embarrassed to cry loudly because I thought everyone in the corridor would hear me. There had been a mirror on the wall then, one of those safety mirrors so staff could see the blind corner. In the dim light, I thought I saw myself standing by the door even though I was sitting at the table. I had told myself it was nothing. The little girl opened the nest door. Inside, the room was not the nest. It was the old quiet room. Same square table, same orange chairs, same faded poster about using your words, same mirror high in the corner. A girl sat at the table with her back to me. Me. 10-year-old me. But the girl standing in the hallway was also me. The one at the table had her head down, shoulders stiff, hands clenched in her lap. The one in the hallway looked up at me and whispered, "You left me in there." Her voice was mine, but smaller. I stepped back. "No." She frowned, not angry, just confused. "You did. I was a child." She looked toward the room. So was I. The lights clicked off at the far end of the corridor. One by one, they started coming toward us. Click, click, click. The girl in the hallway held the red pen out to me. I did not take it. The light above her went off. When the next one came back on, she was gone. The nest was the nest again. Bird painting on the door, beanbag in the corner, plastic tray of fidget toys, no mirror. My phone rang. I almost dropped it. Hannah's name was on the screen. "Where are you?" she said. "Second floor." "I'm outside. Your car's here. The front doors are locked." "I'm coming." "Are you okay?" I looked down the hallway. It was fully lit now, ordinary and empty. "No," I said. I went downstairs without stopping. The stairwell stayed a stairwell. No voices, no footsteps, no children laughing. The front lobby lights were on, and through the glass, I could see Hannah standing outside in a yellow raincoat, holding her phone to her ear. The door was locked from the inside with the thumb turn. I unlocked it and stepped out into the rain. Hannah took one look at me and stopped asking questions. She drove me home because I did not want to get in my own car. The next morning, she brought me back before school so I could collect it, and we checked the building together. Nothing was out of place except my classroom door, which was still unlocked. On my desk, the stack of essays sat where I had left it. The top paper had one red mark on it, a circle around Callum's sentence. My red pen was beside it, capped neatly. I asked Mr. Priest later if the motion lights had been faulty the night before. He said no. He checked the system anyway and told me the second floor corridor sensors had not registered movement between 5:51 and 6:19. I asked about cleaners. They had left at 5:40. I asked whether the nest had ever had a mirror. He said not since he'd worked there. I kept teaching there until the end of the year because leaving midterm would have caused too many problems and because ordinary life has a way of forcing itself back in. Children still needed spellings checked. Parents still complained about lunchboxes. Staff meetings still ran too long, but I stopped staying after 6. On the last day before summer break, I cleared out my desk. At the bottom of the drawer, under old stickers and dried-out whiteboard pens, I found a folded piece of lined paper. It was the kind we used when I was a pupil, with the school crest printed in blue at the top. In careful child handwriting, it said, "Miss Vale let me out." Underneath, in red pen, someone had written, "Not yet." We bought the picture frame because it was £3 and because Lenka said our flat still looked like we were waiting to move out. It was a Saturday afternoon in March, raining in that boring sideways way it does in Bristol, where everything feels damp even indoors. We had gone into a charity shop on Gloucester Road, mostly to get out of the weather. I wasn't looking for anything. Lenka always checked the books and kitchen stuff, and I usually stood near the DVDs pretending I might buy one, even though we didn't own a DVD player. The frame was in a plastic crate under a table with old lampshades and rolled-up posters. It was wooden, dark brown, about the size of a laptop screen, with a thick bevel and a few scratches on the corners. Nothing fancy, but solid. The kind of thing someone's grandparents would have had with a wedding photo in it. "There," Lenka said, holding it up. "That would actually look nice over the little cabinet." I took it from her and checked the back. The stand was missing, but the hooks were still there. No glass cracks. No picture inside, just the cardboard insert with some faded print that said 8 by 10. £3, I said. Exactly. We had moved into the flat 4 months earlier. It was the ground floor of a converted Victorian house in Bishopston, with high ceilings, creaky floors, and windows that let in more street noise than light. The living room had a green sofa we'd bought secondhand, a coffee table with a burn mark on one corner, and a small cabinet by the alcove where we kept bills and takeaway menus. Above it was a blank patch of wall with a rawl plug already sticking out, left by the last tenant. Lenka hated that blank space. I paid for the frame, and the older woman at the till wrapped it in old newspaper. She made a joke about the weather and told us to stay dry. I remember her hands because she had bright blue nail polish chipped at the tips. I remember the frame feeling heavier than I expected in the carrier bag. Nothing strange happened in the shop. We stopped for coffee, picked up groceries, and walked home under one umbrella, arguing about whether coriander tasted like soap. By the time we got back, both of us had wet socks and bad moods. Our cat, Pasha, was sitting on the back of the sofa with his tail flicking, annoyed that we had been gone long enough for him to invent a grievance. I put the shopping away while Lenka leaned the frame against the wall near the cabinet. "We need a photo for it," she said. "Of what?" "I don't know. Something that makes us look like adults. We could frame the council tax bill." She ignored that. Later that evening after dinner, she picked the frame up again and said, "Hang on." I was washing a pan at the sink. "What?" "There's a photo in this." I turned around. "No, there isn't." "There is." She was standing by the cabinet with the frame in both hands, looking down at it. I dried my hands and went over. The cardboard insert was gone. Behind the glass was a photo. At first, my brain treated it like one of those generic frame photos that comes already inside when you buy new ones. A smiling family on a beach, or a black and white city street. But this was not generic. It was our living room. The angle was wrong immediately. It was taken from high up in the far corner near the ceiling, above the bookshelf, looking down across the room. You could see the green sofa, the coffee table, the cabinet, the rug with the frayed edge, the floor lamp with the crooked shade. You could see the window with the rain beating on the outside. And on the sofa, Lenka and I were asleep. Not posing. Not pretending. Asleep. I was lying on my back with one arm hanging off the cushion, mouth slightly open in an ugly way. Lenka was curled against my side with her knees tucked up. Pasha was on the armrest near our feet, looking toward the camera. The TV was on in the photo, showing a pale blue screen. I didn't move for a few seconds. Lenka said, "That's not funny." I didn't do that. "Tom?" "I swear to God I didn't." She looked at me then, properly, and I could see she believed me because she looked more scared than angry. We both turned and looked up at the corner of the living room. There was nothing there, just old plaster, a bit of cobweb, and the top edge of the bookshelf. No camera, no hole, no shelf. Nothing. I took the frame from her and held it closer. The photo was printed on glossy paper, not cheap home printer paper. It looked real. The lighting was dim and grainy, like it had been taken at night without flash. I could see details that made my stomach feel strange. My blue work hoodie folded over the back of a chair, Lenka's slippers near the radiator, a glass on the coffee table with a spoon in it. All of those things were there in the room right then, except the glass. I had just washed it. "Maybe it was here already," I said, although I knew that made no sense. Lenka shook her head. "It had the cardboard thing in it." "I know. We both saw it." "I know." She reached for the frame and started undoing the little metal tabs on the back. Her hands were unsteady. When she removed the backing, the photo slid partly out. There was nothing written on the back. No date, no markings, no shop label, just white paper. I looked inside the frame for anything else, like another picture hidden behind it, but there was only the backing board and a thin piece of cardboard. The faded cardboard insert was not there. We checked the floor, the bag, the newspaper wrapping, the bin. It was gone. Pasha jumped down from the sofa and left the room with his body low to the floor. That made it worse. Lenka wanted to throw the photo away immediately. I said we should keep it for a bit, which sounded sensible in my head, but stupid once I heard myself. I think I wanted proof. If we threw it out, then it would become something we could talk ourselves out of later. We put it in the kitchen drawer under the tea towels and left the frame empty on the table. That night, neither of us wanted to sleep on the sofa, obviously, but the bedroom didn't feel much better. We checked the flat like people in a bad film. Wardrobe, bathroom, under the bed, behind curtains. I stood on a chair and checked the living room corner with my phone torch. There was no camera. I barely slept. Around 3 a.m., I woke up because Lenka was sitting upright beside me. "What?" I whispered. "Listen." The flat was quiet, except for traffic outside and the fridge humming in the kitchen. Then I heard a click from the living room, like the TV turning on. A pale blue light showed under the bedroom door. Lenka gripped my wrist. We did not have a remote in the bedroom. The TV remote was on the coffee table. I had left it there. I was sure. I got up because one of us had to, and because pretending to be brave was easier than lying there. I opened the bedroom door. The TV was on. Blue input screen. No signal. The living room looked exactly like the photo. Not mostly. Exactly. My hoodie was on the chair. Lenka's slippers were by the radiator. A glass with a spoon in it sat on the coffee table. I had washed that glass and put it in the cupboard. I walked over and touched it. There was water in it, cloudy, like someone had rinsed milk from the bottom and not cleaned it properly. The spoon was one of our small teaspoons with a bent handle. Lenka stood in the doorway and said, "Turn it off." I turned the TV off at the plug. The room went dark. From the corner above the bookshelf, something made a soft camera shutter sound. Not loud, not mechanical like an old camera, more like a phone taking a picture with the sound turned low. We both heard it. Lenka said, "We're leaving." We spent the rest of the night at her sister Maya's house in Bedminster. We told her our power was acting weird because it was the only thing either of us could say without sounding unwell. Pasha came with us in his carrier and made angry little noises the whole way. The next morning, in daylight, the flat felt almost normal. The TV was still unplugged. The glass was still on the coffee table. The photo was still in the kitchen drawer. I took pictures of the corner, the frame, the photo, everything. Then I called our landlord and asked if there had ever been security cameras in the flat. He said no, and sounded annoyed that I had called on a Sunday. Lenka checked online for the charity shop. It was closed Sundays. She wanted to go back Monday and ask where the frame had come from. Before that, we noticed the second photo. It was inside the frame. The frame had been empty on the table the night before. We had taken the first photo out and put it in the drawer. Now the frame had a new photo behind the glass, same angle from the ceiling corner. This one showed the living room empty in daylight, but in the photo, the frame was hanging on the wall above the cabinet. In our actual living room, the frame was on the table. Lenka said something in Polish under her breath. She only did that when she was very scared or very angry. We took the second photo out. On the back, again, nothing. The first photo was still in the kitchen drawer. We put them both in an envelope and taped the envelope shut. Then we left the frame outside by the bins. I know that sounds like the obvious thing we should have done first, but at that point I did not want it in the flat for one more minute. We didn't smash it. We didn't do anything dramatic. I just carried it out, leaned it against the brick wall beside the black bin, and came back inside. For the rest of the day, nothing happened. Monday after work, we went back to the charity shop. The older woman with the blue nail polish was there again, sorting donated clothes behind the counter. Lenka showed her a photo of the frame on her phone. "Do you remember us buying this Saturday?" she asked. The woman looked at the picture. "No, love. I wasn't in Saturday. You served us." She shook her head. "I don't work Saturdays." That was awkward enough that I stepped in. "Do you know where it came from?" She looked again. "We get all sorts." "It had a photo in it," Lenka said. The woman smiled politely. "They often do." "Not like this." I could tell Lenka wanted to say more, but the woman was already looking past us at another customer. On the way out, I checked the little receipt in my wallet. I had kept it because I'm weird about receipts. It said £3, homeware, Saturday's date. The shop name was right. The time was 14:18. But the address printed at the bottom was not the charity shop's address. It was ours, our flat number, our street, our postcode. I folded it back up and didn't show Lenka until we were outside. She read it twice, then handed it back like it was dirty. That night, the frame was back in the living room. Not on the table, hanging above the cabinet, exactly like the second photo. Neither of us said anything for a minute. We just stood in the doorway with our coats still on, looking at it. The rawl plug that had been in the wall now had a nail in it. The frame hung straight. Inside it was a third photo. The same living room, same high corner angle. This time, Lenka and I were standing in the doorway looking at the frame. From behind us, it had been taken at that exact moment. In the photo, my hand was still holding my keys. Lenka's scarf was half unwound. Pasha's carrier sat by the door because we had brought him back from Maya's. Everything matched. Except in the photo, there was someone sitting on the sofa. Only the back of their head showed. Dark hair, shoulders hunched, wearing my blue work hoodie. The real sofa was empty. I walked over fast and ripped the frame off the wall. The nail came out with it and left a little chunk of plaster. I turned around expecting something on the sofa, though I don't know what. Empty. Lenka started crying then, quietly, with one hand over her mouth. We left again. This time we took the photos, the receipt, the frame, and Pasha. I put the frame in the boot of my car and drove to a recycling center on the edge of town. It was closed, so I left it in the skip outside the gate. I know you're not meant to do that. I didn't care. We stayed at Maja's for a week. I checked my car boot every morning. Empty. I checked our flat through the window one afternoon while Lenka waited on the pavement. The living room looked normal. No frame on the wall. No one on the sofa. Eventually we went back because we had jobs and rent and a cat, and because fear becomes exhausting when nothing is happening right in front of you. For almost a month, it was quiet. We patched the hole above the cabinet and put up a small print from IKEA instead. Pasha went back to sleeping on the sofa. Lenka stopped talking about moving every day and only mentioned it once or twice a week. Then one evening in April, I came home early from work and found Lenka asleep on the sofa. The TV was on, blue input screen, no signal. That alone made me stop. She was curled on her side, still in her work clothes, one arm tucked under her head. Pasha was on the armrest near her feet, staring at the corner above the bookshelf. I looked up. There was nothing there. Then I noticed the coffee table. A glossy photo lay in the middle of it. I picked it up. It showed our living room from the ceiling corner. Lenka asleep on the sofa, Pasha on the armrest, me standing in the doorway holding the photo. In the photo, above the cabinet, the old frame was hanging on the wall again. I slowly lowered the photo and looked at the real wall. The IKEA print was gone. The old brown frame was there instead. Inside, it was not a photo. It was the faded cardboard insert that had been in it when we bought it, the one that had disappeared. It said 8 by 10 in pale gray print. Lenka woke up while I was still standing there. She looked at me, then at the wall, then at the photo in my hand. Neither of us spoke. From the corner near the ceiling, there was a soft click. The announcement said my full name just after we left Clapham Junction. I was on the 1841 service toward Guildford, sitting in the second carriage from the front with my laptop bag between my feet and a meal deal sandwich unopened on my lap. It had been raining all day and everyone on the train smelled like wet wool, damp umbrellas, and tired office air. The windows were fogged around the edges. Every now and then the carriage rocked hard enough that someone's shoulder bumped mine, but nobody said anything because it was rush hour and we had all stopped being people for a bit. My name is Callum Reeve. That matters because it is not a name you hear by accident over a train speaker. The announcement came through with the usual crackle first. A woman's recorded voice said, "The next station is..." Then there was a pause. Not a normal delay. It felt like the whole train waited with it. The rattling of the wheels seemed to dip lower for half a second, and the man across from me looked up from his phone. Then the speaker said, "Callum Reeve." Clear as anything. Not loud, not distorted. Same calm announcement voice, just my name. I sat there with my hand still on the corner of the sandwich packet. Nobody else reacted. The man across from me went back to scrolling. A woman by the doors shifted her tote bag to the other shoulder. Two teenagers near the aisle kept watching something on one of their phones with no sound. No one looked around. No one laughed. No one made that little confused face people make when public transport does something weird. I looked at the small digital sign above the aisle. It should have been showing the next stop. Instead, it just said, "Please wait." Then it flickered back to normal. Wimbledon, I told myself I was tired. That was the first explanation, and honestly, it was a good one. I worked as a junior estimator for a construction firm near Victoria, and that week had been awful. Our senior QS had gone off sick, a client had changed their mind about half a warehouse roof package, and I had spent 2 days fixing spreadsheets I did not understand well enough to fix. I had slept maybe 4 hours the night before, so I thought I had misheard. Maybe it said Clapham something, maybe someone near me had said my name. Maybe my brain made it fit because I was half asleep. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from my girlfriend Priya. "Did you get on the train?" I typed, "Yeah. Be home about 7:40. The message sat there with a little spinning circle. No signal. That was normal too. Signal was patchy on that line. The train slowed for Wimbledon, but not enough to stop. The platform slid past the windows, take wet and bright under the lights. I saw people standing there, hoods up, looking at the train as it moved through. Someone raised a hand like they were annoyed we weren't stopping. A few people in the carriage noticed then. The woman with the tote bag said, "Are we not stopping?" The man across from me looked at the sign again. It still said Wimbledon. The train carried on. A few phones came out. Someone sighed loudly. A man farther down the carriage muttered, "Brilliant," in the most London way possible. Then the speaker crackled again. This time the voice was not the usual recorded voice. It sounded like the same woman, but closer to the microphone, almost careful. "Please remain seated," it said. "You have missed your exit." The carriage went quiet. Not silent. There was still the track noise, the rain on the glass, someone's headphones leaking tinny music. But people stopped talking. I looked around, waiting for someone to say something. A woman near the doors frowned up at the speaker and said, "What does that mean?" No one answered. My phone buzzed again. I thought it was Priya, but it was my calendar. Meeting reminder, exit interview 1848. I had no meeting called that. I had no meetings after work at all. The little calendar icon looked normal, but the event was not in my calendar when I opened the app. It had only flashed as a notification and vanished. I checked the time. 1848. The train was moving fast now, but the view outside didn't match where we should have been. I knew the line well enough. After Wimbledon, there should have been lights, back gardens, blocks of flats, little stations, the usual messy stretch of southwest London. Instead, there was mostly dark. Not countryside exactly, more like long black gaps between lights. I could see shapes of buildings but no lit windows, a row of brick walls, a service road, fences, then nothing but rain on glass. I leaned closer to the window and wiped the fog with my sleeve. For a second, my reflection looked back at me from the dark glass, pale and stretched by the carriage lights. Behind my reflection, on the opposite side of the window, I saw a platform. It was there for maybe 2 seconds, as if the train was passing a station on the wrong side. Empty platform, yellow line, old green benches, no people. The sign was too blurred to read. Then it was gone. I turned to the man across from me. "Did you hear that announcement?" I asked. He took one earbud out. "What?" "The thing about missing your exit." He shrugged. "Probably for staff. It said my name before." That was when I heard myself and wished I had stopped one sentence earlier. He gave me a polite little smile that meant he wanted the conversation over. "Right." I looked away. The train lights flickered once. When they came back steady, the woman with the tote bag was sitting down even though she had been standing by the doors a moment before. Her bag was on her lap. She looked confused, like she was not sure why she had sat. The digital sign above the aisle changed. Next stop, Eastwell. I had never heard of Eastwell Station on that line. I knew there were places called Eastwell in England, probably several, but not between Wimbledon and Guildford. A teenager near the aisle laughed nervously. "Where's Eastwell?" His friend said, "There is no Eastwell, bruv." The first one checked his phone. No service. The train began to slow. Everyone felt it. The carriage leaned slightly, brakes whining. Outside, the darkness opened into a station. It was not abandoned in a dramatic way. It was clean, but too clean. Fresh white tiles along the walls. A narrow platform with no litter, no posters, no pigeon mess, no old coffee cups. The lights were on, but they had a flat, cold brightness that made everything look like it was inside a hospital. There were no people waiting. The platform sign said Eastwell in black letters on a white board. Under it, smaller text read, "Change here for returning services." The train stopped. The doors did not open. People looked at each other then. Not everyone, but enough. The man across from me stood up and pressed the door button. Nothing happened. The woman with the tote bag pressed the emergency help point near the doors. It made a soft beep, then no voice came through. The speaker crackled again. "Callum Reeve," it said. My whole body went tight. This time, people did react. The teenager by the aisle turned and looked straight at me. Not because he knew me, but because I must have looked like someone hearing his own name through the ceiling. The voice continued. "Please remain seated." The man by the doors looked at me. "Is that you?" I didn't answer. The digital sign above the aisle changed again. "Callum Reeve, please remain seated." The letters were bright orange. Too bright. I stood up. I don't know why. It was the opposite of what the announcement said, and I am usually the kind of person who follows instructions even when they are stupid. But seeing my name above everyone's heads made me feel trapped in my own skin. My laptop bag strap caught around my ankle, and I nearly tripped. I kicked it loose and moved toward the doors. The man across from me said, "Mate, don't." The doors opened. Only the set I was standing in front of. No chime, no warning. Just a clean hiss and cold air rolled into the carriage. Nobody moved. The platform outside was empty. Rain streaked down beyond the canopy, but I couldn't hear it properly. The station sounded muffled, like there was glass between me and everything else. I stepped down. The doors closed behind me. That was when people started reacting. I saw faces through the window. The teenager's mouth moved. The woman with the tote bag raised one hand. The man across from me hit the door button again. The train pulled away. Not slowly. It left like it had been waiting only for me to get off. The carriages slid past, each window showing people under bright lights, all looking forward or down at their phones. By the time the last carriage passed, I could not see anyone looking at me. Then it was gone. I stood alone on the platform at Eastwell. There was no wind, even though the rain beyond the canopy fell at an angle. The station had had one platform, one set of tracks, and stairs leading down to an underpass at the far end. No ticket machines, no maps, no staff office, no adverts. The benches were painted green and looked new, but the metal station clock above them had stopped at 1848. My phone had no signal. I tried calling Priya anyway. The call failed before it rang. I walked to the station sign and took a picture. The camera made the shutter sound, but when I opened my photos, the newest image was from lunch, a picture of a cracked paving slab I had sent to a site manager. No station photo. I took another. Same thing. The screen flashed like it took the photo. Nothing saved. That was the moment I started to feel properly scared. I walked toward the stairs because standing still felt worse. My footsteps echoed on the platform tiles. The stairs went down into a tiled passage lit by long fluorescent tubes. At the bottom, there was a sign with two arrows. Way out, way back. Both arrows pointed left. I went left. The passage should have led outside. Instead, it opened into another platform. Same white tiles, same green benches, same Eastwell sign, same stopped clock at 1848. Only now there was a vending machine near the wall. It was humming softly. The front was lit, showing rows of crisps, water bottles, and chocolate bars. One item in the middle row had my full name printed on the little price label instead of a price. Callum Reeve. I backed away from it. Then I heard a train coming. Not from far away. It sounded like it was already there, wheels rumbling under the platform. A wind pushed along the tiles and lifted the edge of a loose notice taped to the wall. The notice had no writing on it. A train pulled in on the other side of the platform. Same model, same route colors, same wet windows. The doors opened. Inside, the carriage was empty, except for one person. Me. I was sitting by the window in the second carriage from the front, laptop bag between my feet, unopened sandwich on my lap. I was looking down at my phone. I couldn't move. The version of me inside the train looked up. He looked tired, pale, confused. He looked exactly how I must have looked 20 minutes earlier, or 5 minutes earlier, or whenever this was. His eyes moved from my face to the platform sign behind me. The speaker above the platform crackled. "Please remain seated," it said. The me inside the train stood up. I raised both hands without thinking, like I was warning him back. "No," I said. I don't know if he heard me. The doors closed between us. He was still standing there when the train pulled away. As it left, one of the windows reflected the platform behind me. In the reflection, there were people standing there. A full rush hour crowd, dozens of them, coats, bags, umbrellas, all facing the tracks. But when I turned around, the platform was empty. My phone buzzed. Signal for 1 second. A message from Priya finally sent. "Yeah. Be home about 7:40. Under it, a new message appeared from her. "Callum, where are you? You came in and then left again." I typed, "What do you mean? No signal." I tried walking the other direction along the platform. There was no exit at that end, just a locked metal gate with a sign that said, "Staff only." Behind the gate, stairs went up into darkness. I rattled the gate once, and the sound came back wrong, like someone else had rattled one farther away a second later. The station announcement chimed. This time it used a man's voice, older and flat. "The next service is not for passengers." I looked down the tracks. Far in the tunnel, 2 lights appeared. They were too low and too close together for a train at first, then they widened as they approached. The rails began to hum. I moved back from the edge until my shoulders hit the tiled wall. The train that came in had no destination on the front. The windows were dark. It stopped with one door lined up exactly in front of me. The door opened. Inside was my normal train. Same people, same wet coats, same man across from me, same woman with the tote bag. Same teenagers. My empty seat was there with my laptop bag between my feet, except I was not in the seat. The man across from me looked up and saw me standing on the platform. His face changed. He said something, but I couldn't hear through the open door, even though it was right there. His mouth formed. "How?" I stepped on. The second I crossed the threshold, sound came back all at once. Track noise, someone coughing, music through headphones, the soft beep of the doors closing. The digital sign said, "Next stop, Surbiton," a normal stop, a real stop, one we should have passed ages ago. I sat down in my original seat, shaking badly enough that I had trouble pulling my laptop bag back under my knees. The man across from me stared at me. "You got off?" he said. I looked at him. "You saw that?" He nodded once, slowly. "At that weird station." The woman with the tote bag leaned forward. "What station?" The man looked at her. "You were there." "I've been on this train since Waterloo," she said. "We haven't stopped since Wimbledon." The teenager across the aisle said, "We stopped at Wimbledon." His friend said, "No, we didn't." People started arguing in that quiet public way where nobody wants to seem too bothered. Half the carriage remembered stopping at a station called Eastwell. Some remembered Wimbledon. Some thought we had been moving the whole time. One older woman said she had been asleep and wanted everyone to shut up. I checked my phone, 19:06. Only 18 minutes had passed since 1848, but Priya's messages were there now. Callum, where are you? You came in and then left again. Your bag is here. This isn't funny. Call me. My laptop bag was still between my feet. I called her as soon as I got signal after Surbiton. She answered before the first ring finished. Where are you? She said. On the train. You were just here. No, I wasn't. Callum, you walked in, put your keys in the bowl, didn't say anything, then walked out the front door. What time? 10 minutes ago, maybe less. I'm still on the train. She didn't speak for a second. Then she said, I'm looking at your keys. I reached into my coat pocket. My keys were gone. I searched every pocket. Coat, trousers, laptop bag, the little zip pocket where I kept receipts. Nothing. The man across from me was still watching me, but he was pretending not to. I told Priya I would explain when I got home, then had to ask her to stay on the phone until my stop. She did. I could hear our dog, Fenwick, barking in the background, sharp and nervous. He was a little brown lurcher mix who only barked at delivery drivers and foxes in the garden. When the train reached my actual station, I waited until 3 other people got off before I stood. The man across from me got up too. I saw the sign, he said quietly. What sign? The one with your name. He looked embarrassed saying it. I don't know what happened. I nodded because there was nothing useful to say. Priya met me at the front door wearing her big cardigan and no shoes. My keys were in the bowl by the door, wet like they had been out in the rain. My shoes were not there. The pair I had been wearing were still on my feet, damp from the Eastwell platform. Priya said the other me had looked right past her like he didn't recognize her. Fenwick had backed into the kitchen and growled until the front door closed. She had thought I was angry or sleepwalking or having some kind of breakdown. I showed her my phone. The failed photos were not there. The calendar reminder was gone. The message I sent her was there, but the timestamps were wrong. Mine said 1849. Hers said 1842, then 1843, then 1851. We did not sleep much. The next morning, I searched Eastwell Station. Nothing matched. There were villages and old references to closed railway stops with similar names, but nothing on that route, nothing with that sign, nothing with change here for returning services. By lunch, the train company had emailed me, not a personal email, an automatic delay repay notification, even though I had not submitted one. It said my journey had been delayed by 18 minutes due to passenger confusion. The attached service report listed the unscheduled stop between Wimbledon and Surbiton. Station. Reason. Customer missed exit. Resolved 1906. I saved the email. Then I forwarded it to myself, Priya, and my work address. By evening, all 3 copies were blank. The subject line stayed. Everything inside was gone. I woke up at 6:41 on a Tuesday because the delivery truck outside my building was backing up with that flat, repeating beep that always sounded way louder than it needed to. It had rained most of the night, and the courtyard outside my bedroom window looked washed out and gray. My apartment complex was the kind with outdoor walkways, beige doors, and little patches of mulch that always smelled damp when it rained. I lived on the 2nd floor in Unit 214, and at that time I had been there for about 8 months. I lived alone. No roommate, no boyfriend, no family nearby. Just me, my old orange cat, Cricket, who mostly slept in the hallway closet because she liked the hot water pipes. The first thing I did every morning was reach for my phone and check my sleep tracking app. I had started using it a few months before because I was trying to fix my awful sleep schedule. It recorded movement and sound during the night, then gave me one of those little graphs showing deep sleep, light sleep, awake time, all of that. Most mornings it was boring. A cough, a car door outside, Cricket knocking something off the bathroom sink. That morning, the graph had a bright orange section between 2:03 a.m. and 2:17 a.m. Awake, not restless, not light sleep, awake. Under it, the app had a note that said significant movement detected. I stared at it for a few seconds, still half asleep, because I didn't remember waking up at all. I didn't remember using the bathroom, getting water, checking my phone, nothing. I remembered turning off my lamp around 11:30, hearing rain tapping against the AC unit, and then waking up to the delivery truck. That was it. I tapped the orange section and it opened the detailed view. The app had marked walking for 11 of the 14 minutes. That made me sit up. I had used the app long enough to know it could be dramatic. It once thought I was snoring when someone's motorcycle started outside, but walking was new. I slept with my phone on the corner of the mattress beside me, plugged into the wall. For it to register walking, I would have had to pick it up and carry it around. I checked my phone battery, thinking maybe it had glitched or restarted or something. It was normal. Still plugged in, nothing strange there. Cricket wasn't in the room. That was normal too. I called her name, and after a moment she came out from under the bed, which was not normal. She never slept under the bed. She acted like the space under there was beneath her standards. She crawled out low to the ground, shook one paw like it was wet, and stared at the bedroom door. I said, "What's your problem?" She didn't blink. I opened the audio recording from that section of the night. Most of it was silence. Not perfect silence, but normal apartment silence. The low hum of the fan, rainwater dripping from the gutter, something that might have been cricket shifting around. At 2:04, there was a soft rustle like blankets moving, then the sound of footsteps. I froze with my thumb over the screen. They were quiet but clear. Bare feet or socks on carpet. My carpet. I knew the sound because my bedroom carpet had this cheap, scratchy texture, and it made a certain brushing noise when you dragged your feet. The footsteps moved away from the phone, then back toward it, then away again. I listened with the phone held close to my face, my stomach starting to feel sour. At 2:08, there was a small thump, like the closet door bumping the wall. I looked at the closet. It was closed. At 2:11, there was breathing close to the phone. Then my own voice whispered, "She's still asleep." I dropped the phone on the bed. It bounced once and landed face down on the blanket. The room suddenly felt too quiet. Even the delivery truck had stopped beeping. For a minute, I didn't move. I just stared at the back of my phone like it might say something else if I touched it. Then I picked it up again because some stubborn part of me needed to hear it a second time. I replayed the last 20 seconds. Footsteps. Breathing. She's still asleep. It was my voice. Not similar to my voice. Not a neighbor through the wall. Not a TV. I don't even own a TV in my bedroom. It was me whispering right next to my phone in the flat little half whisper I use when I'm trying not to wake someone up. Except there was no one to wake up. I got out of bed and checked the apartment. The front door was locked. Deadbolt turned. Chain on. The balcony door was locked too. The kitchen window was closed. Bathroom window closed. Nothing was missing. My purse was on the chair where I'd left it. My keys were in the ceramic bowl by the door. Cricket's food dish was empty, but that was normal because she acted like starvation began every 4 hours. I checked the closet because of the thump on the recording. Nothing looked wrong at first. Laundry basket, coats, vacuum, a box of winter stuff I still hadn't unpacked. Then I noticed my blue rain jacket was hanging on the wrong hook. That sounds stupid, but I always hung it on the left hook because the right hook was loose and tilted downward. That morning, it was on the right hook. The sleeve was caught in the vacuum handle, like someone had pulled it down fast and shoved it back. I stood there for too long looking at a jacket. I told myself I must have moved it and forgotten. Maybe I woke up in the night and sleepwalked. People did that. I had never done it, not as a kid, not in college, not ever, but people started doing weird things when they were stressed. Work had been awful that week. I was behind on invoices, and my manager, Devika, had been hovering over everyone like we were hiding treasure in the spreadsheets. So I went with sleepwalking. That explanation lasted until I opened my bedroom door all the way and saw the cup. The night before, I had taken a glass of water to bed. It had a little faded lemon pattern on it. I remembered setting it on my nightstand beside the lamp. It was now on the floor outside my bedroom door. Not spilled, not broken, just sitting there upright on the hallway carpet, half full. The strangest part was the coaster underneath it. I didn't use coasters in the hallway. Nobody did. The coaster belonged on my nightstand. It was round and cork, with a burn mark from a candle I shouldn't have put on it once. It was under the glass, like someone had carefully placed it there. I picked up the glass. The water was cold. I checked the sleep app again, because suddenly I didn't trust my own timeline. The recording started at 2:03. Before that, normal sleep. After 2:17, normal sleep. No other sounds except rain and the fan. I played more of it while sitting on the edge of the bed. At 2:12, after the whisper, there was a pause. Then another sound I hadn't noticed the first time. 3 light taps, not on the phone, not on the nightstand, on glass. Tap, tap, tap. I looked toward the hallway where I had found the water glass. Cricket jumped onto the bed beside me and started sniffing my pillow. Then she backed away, ears flat, and hopped down. I almost called my mother, but it was barely 7 in the morning, and I didn't want to have the conversation where she asked whether I had been taking melatonin again. I had taken it once the year before and had a weird dream about eating a paper towel, and she still brought it up whenever I said I slept badly. Instead, I took screenshots of the app, the graph, the movement log, the timestamp. Then I exported the audio clip and saved it. I went to work because that was the kind of morning where I somehow convinced myself going to the office would make things normal. It didn't. The whole drive there, I kept hearing the whisper in my head. She's still asleep. Not, I'm still asleep. Not, you're still asleep. She. Like whoever said it was talking about me. I worked in a low-brick office building next to a dentist and a tax place. My desk was near the back, under a vent that clicked all day. I tried to act normal. I answered emails. I made coffee. I told Devika I had slept fine when she asked why I looked distracted. Around 10:30, my coworker Niall came over and asked if I had sent him a message before work. I said, "What message?" He turned his monitor slightly so I could see. There was a chat from me in our work system, sent at 2:14 a.m. It said, "I'll check when I wake up." I stared at it. Neil laughed a little and said, "Late night dedication?" I didn't answer fast enough because his smile faded. I checked my own chat history. There it was, sent from my account at 2:14 a.m. I had no memory of it. I also had no reason to send it. It was in reply to a message Niall had sent the previous afternoon about a missing vendor file. A normal, boring work thing. I hadn't answered before leaving because I planned to check in the morning. The message was exactly what I might have said. That made it worse. I told Niall I must have woken up and responded without remembering. He said, "That's actually kind of unsettling," then walked away like he wished he hadn't asked. At lunch, I checked the login activity for the work app. It showed a mobile login from my phone at 2:13 a.m. Same device, same IP address, my apartment Wi-Fi. I closed the page and sat in my car for the rest of lunch. That evening, I decided not to use the sleep app. I didn't want more data. I didn't want to know anything else. I plugged my phone in across the room on my desk instead of beside the bed. I also put the water glass in the kitchen sink and left the coaster on the nightstand just to prove to myself I knew where things were. Before bed, I checked the locks twice, then a third time. Cricket watched me from the hallway with her tail wrapped around her feet. It was still raining, softer than the night before. The apartment smelled faintly like wet concrete because the building's outdoor stairs held water in the cracks. I fell asleep sometime after midnight. At 3:19 a.m., I woke up sitting on the edge of the bed. The room was dark except for the little green light on my charger across the room. My feet were on the carpet. My hands were resting on my knees. For a second, I didn't know where I was. Then I did, and panic hit so hard I couldn't breathe right. I hadn't dreamed. I hadn't heard anything. I was just suddenly sitting up like I had been placed there. The bedroom door was open. I always slept with it mostly closed because Cricket liked to push it open dramatically at dawn. Now it was wide open. From the hallway came 3 light taps. Tap, tap, tap. I didn't move. Then my phone screen lit up across the room. Not with a call, not with an alarm, just the lock screen waking up. The time said 2:15. I blinked hard. The clock on my bedside table said 3:20. I looked back at the phone. Still 2:17. The phone dimmed and went dark. I sat there until my legs started to cramp. Then I forced myself up and turned on every light in the apartment. The hallway was empty. The front door was locked. The kitchen was normal. except the lemon glass was on the counter. I had left it in the sink. I knew I had. I had rinsed it and put it in the left side of the sink with a spoon and a plate. Now it was standing on the counter beside the fridge, half full of water, on the burned cork coaster. I didn't touch it. I grabbed Cricket, my keys, and my phone, and I went downstairs to my car in pajama pants and a hoodie. I sat in the driver's seat until sunrise with Cricket in her carrier making furious little noises at me. At 7, I called the apartment office and told them I needed someone to check my locks. The maintenance guy, Orlin, came by around 9. He was nice, maybe late 50s, always smelled like sawdust and peppermint gum. He checked the front door, balcony door, windows, strike plates, everything. He said nothing looked forced, no signs anyone had been in. I asked if there had been reports of anyone getting into apartments. He said no, then looked at my face and asked, "You hear somebody?" I said I didn't know. He didn't laugh. He just tightened the loose hook in my closet without me asking, which almost made me cry for some reason. For the next few days, I slept at my friend Maria's place. She lived 20 minutes away with her younger brother and a gray poodle named Figaro, so there were always people and sounds around. I told her the least weird version of what happened. Sleepwalking, weird app recording, got scared. She believed that part. She told me stress did strange things and made me tea. On the third night at her place, I checked the old audio clip again. I don't know why. I had already listened to it too many times. Maybe I wanted it to sound different in a different apartment, like the context would change it. It didn't. Footsteps. Breathing. She's still asleep. Maria was sitting beside me on the couch when I played it. She went very still. I said, "That's my voice, right?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "It sounds like you, but not how you talk." I asked what that meant. She frowned and said, "It sounds like when you're repeating something someone told you to say." I wish she hadn't said that. When I finally went back to my apartment, nothing obvious had changed. The air was stale. The plants on the windowsill had drooped. Cricket walked around sniffing everything, then went straight to the hallway closet like she had been gone a year. I deleted the sleep app. Then I reinstalled it 5 minutes later because not knowing felt worse than knowing. That night, I set my phone beside the bed again, but I also set my laptop on the dresser with the camera pointed toward the room. I didn't want to do that. I felt ridiculous doing it. But I did it anyway. I slept badly, waking up every hour. In the morning, the app showed no awake periods. No walking, no audio events. The laptop recording showed me sleeping normally, shifting around, pulling the blanket up, nothing strange. I felt embarrassed and relieved. The next night was normal too. Then the next. After about a week, I started calming down. The whole thing began to feel like one of those things that seemed impossible at 3 in the morning, but less impossible after coffee and daylight. Maybe I had sleepwalked. Maybe I had whispered something from a dream. Maybe the app timestamp had been off. Maybe the glass thing was bad memory. Maybe all of it lined up in the worst possible way. That was the explanation I tried to live with. On the 8th morning, I woke up before my alarm. The room was pale with early light and the rain had finally stopped. The air outside was quiet except for someone rolling a trash bin across the parking lot. I checked the app. No orange section. No awake time. No walking. I actually laughed a little because I felt stupid for being scared. Then I saw there was one audio clip from 2:17 a.m. It was only 6 seconds long. I played it. At first there was nothing, just the fan. Then my voice whispered very close to the phone, "Not yet." I stopped sleeping with my phone in the room after that. The first time I saw the kid, I was walking home from the late shift at the Stop and Save on Briar Road. It was a windy dusk in October, the kind where every loose thing on the street kept scraping around. Plastic bags got caught under parked cars, dry leaves ran along the gutters, and the streetlights flickered like they were struggling to wake up. I finished at 7, but I stayed an extra half hour because our assistant manager, Renzo, couldn't get the lottery machine to print the end-of-day report. By the time I started walking, the sky was that dull purple color before it goes fully dark. I didn't drive back then. My apartment was only 12 minutes from the store if I cut through Ardell Street, past the old furniture warehouse and the empty house on Wicker Lane. Most people avoided that block because half the homes were boarded up or under renovation, but I had walked it for years without a problem. The abandoned house was the last one before the corner. Everyone in the neighborhood knew it. 3 stories, narrow and tall, with peeling green paint and a porch that sagged in the middle. The front steps had weeds growing through the cracks. Some of the windows were boarded from the inside, not the outside, which always looked wrong to me. The place had been empty longer than I had lived there. That evening, I glanced up because something white moved in the 3rd floor window. At first, I thought it was a curtain, which made no sense because the house didn't have curtains. Then I stopped on the sidewalk and looked properly. There was a child standing at the upstairs window. Small, maybe 6 or 7. I couldn't tell if it was a boy or a girl. The face was pale in the dim room, and the hair looked short and dark. The child had both hands down at first, then slowly raised one hand, not waving exactly, just lifting it until the palm touched the glass. I stood there with my work bag on my shoulder, staring like an idiot. The window was on the top floor, left side. The glass was dirty, but not broken. I could see the child clearly enough to know I wasn't looking at a reflection. There were no cars passing behind me, no porch lights bright enough, no person standing anywhere near me. I almost called out, but my mouth went dry before I could. Then the wind pushed a branch against the side of the house, making a scraping sound, and I suddenly felt stupid. Kids broke into abandoned houses all the time. That was the reasonable answer. Some kid had climbed in to mess around, maybe with friends hiding in another room. I took 2 steps toward the gate. The child's hand stayed against the glass. I said, "Hey, are you okay?" My voice sounded thin on that empty street. The child didn't react, didn't nod, didn't move away, just stood there. I pulled my phone out to call someone, maybe the non-emergency line, but the screen was black. Dead battery. I had forgotten to charge it at work. By the time I looked back up, the window was empty. I waited another minute, then crossed the street and kept walking home faster than usual. I told myself it was probably a kid. Maybe they heard me and ran. Maybe I should have knocked on a neighbor's door, but none of the houses nearby had lights on. And I didn't want to be the guy making a big deal out of nothing. At home, I plugged in my phone and tried to look up the house. I found an old real estate listing from 8 years earlier, then a city notice about unsafe property conditions. Nothing helpful. No family lived there, no tenants, no renovations. That night, I mentioned it to my sister Ainsley when she called. She asked if I was sure it wasn't a reflection. I said, "A reflection of what? A Victorian ghost child?" She didn't laugh. She said people sometimes squatted in empty houses, and I should stop walking that way. That would have been the smart thing to do, so of course I didn't do it. The next night, it rained. Not a hard rain, just a steady, cold drizzle that made the pavement shine under the streetlights. I finished work on time and almost took Mercer Avenue instead, but that route added 15 minutes and went past the railroad underpass, which was honestly creepier than Wicker Lane. I told myself the whole thing would seem normal once I saw the house empty. I reached the corner around 7:20. Before I even got close, I looked up at the 3rd floor window. Nothing. The top floor was dark. The dirty glass caught a little gray light from the sky, but there was no child. I let out a breath and kept walking. Then I saw movement in the 2nd floor window. Same side of the house, 1 floor lower. The child was there again. I stopped so hard my shoe slipped on wet leaves. This time, the child stood in the 2nd floor window, still and pale, with one hand raised against the glass. Same small shape, same dark hair, same flat, quiet posture. I don't know why that bothered me more than seeing them the first time. A child in an abandoned house was already bad. But the change felt deliberate, like it was part of something I didn't understand but was supposed to notice. I looked around for someone else, anyone, a neighbor, a dog walker, a car at the stop sign. The street was empty. I shouted, "You need to get out of there." The child didn't move. Rain ticked against my hood. Somewhere nearby, a loose gutter clanged in the wind. I crossed the street again, closer this time, stopping at the rusted front gate. The porch was dark. The front door had a sheet of plywood nailed over it, but one corner had been pried loose. There was a gap wide enough for a skinny kid to squeeze through. I said, "Are your parents around?" Nothing. I raised my own hand a little, not waving either, just doing the same thing without meaning to. The child lowered their hand, then stepped backward into the dark room. I didn't see them turn around. They just moved away from the glass and vanished into the black behind it. I stood in the rain with my heart pounding and kept trying to make it normal. Maybe a kid was hiding there. Maybe they had some reason not to answer. Maybe they were scared of me. Maybe I should call the police. So I did. My phone was charged that night. I called the non-emergency number while standing across the street. I told the woman who answered there might be a child inside an abandoned house. She asked for the address, my name, whether the child seemed injured, whether I heard anyone else. I stayed until a patrol car pulled up. 2 officers got out, one tall and tired looking, the other younger and annoyed by the rain. The tall one, Officer Blevins, asked what I saw. I told him. He shined his flashlight up at the windows. Nothing. They checked around the porch and the side yard. The younger officer pushed at the loose plywood but didn't go in right away. They called someone, waited, then went inside with flashlights while I stood under a tree across the street getting soaked. They came back out after maybe 10 minutes. No child. No signs anyone had been staying there. No sleeping bag, no food wrappers, no fresh footprints that they could tell because the floors were covered in old dust and damp spots from leaks. Officer Blevins asked if I had been drinking. I said no. I still had my Stop and Save name tag on my jacket. He didn't accuse me of anything, but his face had already moved on. He told me to call again if I saw someone, but not to approach the house. I went home embarrassed and angry, mostly at myself. The next morning, I told Renzo I might start leaving through the back and taking Mercer Avenue. He asked why, and I told him a short version. Abandoned house. Kid in window. Cops found nothing. He said, "Oh, the Wicker place?" I asked if he knew it. He shrugged and said his cousin used to live on that block. People see stuff there all the time, usually teenagers or junkies. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. I asked if anyone had ever seen a little kid. He looked at me differently then and said, "No. Why?" I said no reason. That third night, I swore I wouldn't walk past it. I really meant that. But at closing, a customer left a wallet at register 2, and I had to help Renzo check the camera timestamps. By the time I left, I was tired and irritated and not thinking clearly. I took my normal route by habit. The weather had turned still and cold. No rain. No wind. Just a low gray sky and the smell of wet leaves. I didn't look at the house until I was almost in front of it. The 3rd floor window was empty. The 2nd floor window was empty. The child was in the 1st floor window. Same side, same pale face, same raised hand. I felt something in me drop, like I had missed a stair. That window had been boarded up the night before. I knew it had. I remembered because Officer Blevins had shined his flashlight across it, and the plywood had a black spray-painted circle on it. Now, the plywood was gone. The glass behind it looked old, but clean enough to show the child clearly. They stood close to it, almost pressed against it, the palm of their small hand flattened on the other side. I backed up without meaning to. A car came around the corner, headlights sweeping over the house. For 1 second, the child's face disappeared in the glare. When the headlights passed, the child was still there. The car slowed next to me. It was Mrs. Pell from my building, an older woman who drove a blue hatchback and always wore big silver earrings. She rolled her window down and asked if I was all right. I pointed at the house. "Do you see that kid?" She leaned toward her windshield and squinted. The child was right there. Mrs. Pell said, "What kid?" I looked from her to the window and back again. The child didn't move. I said, "In the window. 1st floor. Right there." She stared for another moment, then looked at me with concern instead of fear. "Honey, that window is boarded." I turned back. The plywood was there, black spray-painted circle and all. No glass, no child. I couldn't speak. Mrs. Pell asked if I wanted a ride home. I said yes before she finished the sentence. In the car, I kept looking over my shoulder until the house disappeared behind us. She didn't ask questions, which somehow made it worse. She just drove me to our building and said, very gently, "You work too much." I thanked her and went inside. That night, I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the hand on the glass, not waving, not asking for help, just marking a place. Top floor, 2nd floor, 1st floor. I knew what came next, and I hated that I knew it. There was no lower floor unless you counted the basement, and I had no idea if that house even had one. But the pattern was obvious enough that I couldn't pretend I hadn't noticed. The next day was my day off. I decided to go look in daylight because night was making everything worse in my head. Around noon, under a flat overcast sky, I walked to Wicker Lane with my phone fully charged and Ainsley on speaker. She hated the idea, but she also knew arguing wouldn't stop me. The house looked worse in daylight. The porch steps were bowed, paint curled off the siding in strips. The yard was full of brown weeds and an old bicycle frame half buried near the fence. All the windows were boarded, including the first floor one. I took pictures. Third floor, second floor, first floor, porch, door, side yard, everything. There was no child, no clear way in except the loosened plywood near the front door. I didn't go inside. I wasn't that stupid. But I did walk around to the side where a narrow drive led to the back. That was where I found the basement window. It was low to the ground, half hidden behind weeds and a cracked plastic planter. The glass was black with dirt, but not boarded. I crouched a few feet away and looked at it. Ainsley said through the phone, "Please don't put your face near that." I'm not. I took a picture. For a second, my phone camera wouldn't focus. The screen pulsed in and out, and blurring the window, sharpening the weeds, blurring again. Then a small hand appeared on the inside of the basement glass. I fell backward onto the wet ground. Ainsley shouted my name through the speaker. The hand stayed there, only the hand. Small fingers spread wide, palm flat, no face above it because the window was too low and dark. I scrambled up and ran straight into the driveway, nearly dropping my phone. I didn't stop until I was across the street. When I looked back, the basement window was just dirty glass. Ainsley kept asking what happened. I told her I saw the hand. She told me to call the police again. I didn't. I already knew how that would go. Instead, I walked to the public library 2 streets over and asked if they had old local papers. The librarian, a thin man named Colm with a red lanyard, showed me how to search the archive computers. I spent 2 hours looking up the house address. There were articles about code violations like a small kitchen fire in 2009, unpaid taxes, complaints about raccoons. Nothing about a missing child, nothing about a death, nothing that made the story click into place. The closest thing I found was a notice from 1998 saying the house had been converted into 3 apartments without proper permits. A grainy photo showed the porch before it sagged, the same narrow windows, the same steep roof. In the background of the photo, in the top left upstairs window, there was a blur that looked like a face. I stared at it for so long that Colm came over and asked if the computer froze. I printed the article, then I threw it away outside the library because I didn't want it in my apartment. That night, I took Mercer Avenue home. It was longer, brighter, busier. I passed the laundromat, the pizza place, the underpass, the closed barber shop. I kept my eyes forward and my phone in my hand. Nothing happened. The next night, I took Mercer again. Nothing happened then either. By Friday, I started to feel like maybe I had stepped out of the pattern, like the thing only worked if I walked past the house. That was not a comforting thought, but it was better than the alternative. Saturday night was hot for October, strangely hot, with no breeze at all. The kind of night where the air felt stale. I worked until 11 because someone called out, and by the time I left, I was exhausted enough to feel hollow. I took Mercer. Halfway home, I realized the railroad underpass lights were out. All of them. I stopped at the top of the slope. The underpass was a black rectangle under the tracks, and water dripped somewhere inside even though it hadn't rained. I could have turned around, but that would mean walking almost back to the store and then around another 20 minutes. I was tired. I was sweaty. I wanted to be home. I turned on my phone flashlight and walked through. The light bounced over graffiti, puddles, old cans, concrete walls. My footsteps echoed too loud. Near the middle, my phone buzzed. A text from Ainsley. "Did you get home?" The time on my phone said 7:20. I stopped. It had been 11:18 when I left work. I knew that because Renzo had complained about missing the 11:15 bus. My phone couldn't be showing 7:20, not unless it had changed time zones or glitched. The screen blinked once. 11:23. The text from Ainsley vanished, not moved, not marked unsent, just gone. I stood under the tracks listening to water drip in the dark. Then, from ahead of me, very faint, came 3 taps. Tap, tap, tap. I raised my flashlight. At the far end of the underpass beyond the beam, there was a small figure standing at the exit. Not in a window, just standing. I couldn't see details, only the size, the shape, the pale oval of a face. One hand lifted. I turned and ran back the way I came. I didn't care how it looked. I ran up the slope, across Mercer, past the laundromat, and into the all-night gas station on the corner. The clerk, a heavy-set guy named Tavon, looked up from his phone like I was about to rob him. I asked if I could stand inside for a minute. He said, "You good?" I said, "No." He let me stay. I called a ride home and waited under the bright lights by the freezer case. Tavon kept glancing out the front windows. Once he said, "Somebody following you?" I looked. Across the street, at the edge of the dark underpass, there was nobody. My ride came. I went home. I slept with the kitchen light on. After that, I stopped walking home completely. I took rides when I could. If I couldn't, I called a cab even when I couldn't afford it. Renzo noticed and asked if I was having trouble with somebody. I told him it was nothing. He didn't believe me, but he let it go. 2 weeks passed. The abandoned house became something I avoided thinking about. I changed my route to work. I stopped looking down Wicker Lane when the bus passed it. I didn't tell anyone else because saying it out loud made me sound like I needed sleep or help or both. Then one afternoon, a notice went up in my building lobby. City demolition scheduled for unsafe structure on Wicker Lane. I read it 3 times. The demolition happened on a cold Monday morning. I had the day off, and I told myself I wasn't going to watch. Then I watched anyway from the corner near the bakery with a coffee I didn't drink. A small crowd had gathered. Neighbors, city workers, 2 cops, a guy filming on his phone. The house looked smaller in the daylight with machines around it, less like something waiting and more like rotten wood. They tore the porch off first, then the front wall. Boards cracked, dust lifted, insulation blew out in pale clumps. The inside was just rooms, old wallpaper, broken stairs, hanging wires, nothing strange. When they opened the front of the second floor, I saw the room where the child had stood the second night. Empty, water-stained, a mattress frame on its side. When they pulled down the first floor, I saw the boarded window from inside. No glass behind it, just plywood and old nails. I almost felt relieved. Then the excavator bucket scraped near the basement. One of the workers shouted for the machine to stop. People leaned forward. Someone said they found something. I felt the coffee cup bend in my hand. It wasn't a body. It wasn't anything dramatic like that. It was a door. A small interior door, painted dull yellow, lying flat beneath the basement debris, like it had been used to cover a hole or crawl space. It was child-sized, maybe 4 feet tall, with a brass knob and 3 cloudy glass panes across the top. The workers dragged it out and set it against the fence. 3 dusty handprints were on the glass. Small ones, one high, one in the middle, one low. I took 1 step back and bumped into someone behind me. I turned to apologize. A woman I didn't know stood there in a brown coat. She looked past me at the door and said, "He made it to the ground then." I stared at her. She blinked like she had surprised herself by speaking. I asked, "What did you say?" She shook her head quickly. "Nothing. Sorry." Then she walked away before I could ask anything else. I watched her cross the street and turn the corner onto Ardell. I tried to follow, but a garbage truck rolled through and blocked my view for maybe 5 seconds. When it passed, she was gone. The workers broke the yellow door apart before loading it into the dumpster. I stood there until the house was mostly a pile of boards and plaster. I walked home in the middle of the day, taking Mercer, even though it made no sense from where I was. That night, I got back from the store around 8:40. A cab dropped me in front of my building. The air was cold and dry. The parking lot lights buzzed overhead. As I climbed the stairs to my apartment, I saw a small handprint on the outside of my living room window. I lived on the 2nd floor. The print was low on the glass, about the height of a child's shoulder. It was made of dust, not dirt, like someone had pressed a dry, powdery hand there and lifted it away. I stood on the walkway with my keys out, looking at it. My curtains were open. Inside my apartment, everything was dark. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Ainsley. "Did you get home?" The time at the top of my screen said 7:20. I opened my laptop at 6:18 on a gray overcast morning because the kettle was taking forever, and I wanted to check if my client had sent the revised invoice. My apartment was quiet in that dull weekday way. The radiator clicked under the window. A delivery van idled somewhere outside. My upstairs neighbor, Mr. Orpa, was already walking around in shoes like he did every morning, slow, heavy steps from his bedroom to his kitchen and back again. I lived alone in a third-floor flat over a closed travel agency and a hair salon that only opened 4 days a week. The building always smelled a little like dust, shampoo, and old carpet. I worked from home most days doing bookkeeping for small businesses, so my laptop was basically my office, my filing cabinet, and sometimes my only conversation before lunch. I sat at the kitchen table in my robe, opened my email, and saw there was a draft. I noticed it because I almost never left drafts sitting there. I'm the kind of person who either sends the email or deletes it. The little number next to drafts said 1, bolded like it wanted attention. At first, I assumed it was some half-written message to my landlord about the bathroom extractor fan, because I had been meaning to ask him about it for a week. I clicked it without thinking. The draft was addressed to me. My own email address was in the to field. There was no subject. The body had one line. You noticed it too late last time. I just sat there and read it 3 or 4 times. The kettle clicked off behind me, loud enough that I jumped and knocked my knee against the table. I remember saying, "Ow," out loud, like that made the whole thing more normal. I checked the timestamp on the draft. It said it had been saved at 3:42 a.m. I had been asleep at 3:42 a.m. I knew that because I had fallen asleep on the couch around midnight, woken up with a stiff neck around 1:10, brushed my teeth, and gone properly to bed. I remembered plugging my phone in. I remembered the rain tapping against the window for a bit. Then nothing, until my alarm at 6:05. I hadn't opened my laptop. The laptop had been closed on the kitchen table. I checked the sent folder, then the trash, then the activity log. Nothing strange, at least nothing I understood. My account showed a login from my apartment at 3:41 a.m. Same laptop, same browser, same everything. I told myself I must have done it half asleep. That wasn't impossible. I had answered messages half asleep before. Once I texted my sister, Leora, the word cabinet with no context at 2 in the morning. She still brought it up whenever she wanted to be annoying. People did weird things when they were tired, but the sentence didn't sound like something I would write. You noticed it too late last time. It sounded like a warning, but from someone who knew I had already failed at something. That bothered me more than the fact it was addressed to myself. I was still looking at it when another sentence appeared at the bottom. No typing indicator. No cursor moving like someone was remotely controlling it. The words just showed up, one moment blank and the next moment there. Don't turn around yet. I stopped breathing for a second. Behind me was the kitchen doorway, then the narrow hall leading to the bathroom and bedroom. I had my back to it. The kettle was on the counter to my left. The window was in front of me, gray morning light reflecting off the black screen border. I didn't turn around. That's the part I hate admitting. I sat there and obeyed the message on my laptop like an idiot. My hands were on the table, and I could see them shaking a little. I stared at the words and listened. There was nothing obvious behind me. The radiator clicked again. A car passed outside through a puddle. Mr. Orpa's footsteps creaked overhead. Then my bathroom fan switched on. I never left it on because it made a grinding noise after a few minutes. Also, the bathroom was down the hall behind me. The switch was inside the bathroom by the door. I stared harder at the screen. My email draft still said the same thing. You noticed it too late last time. Don't turn around yet. The fan buzzed for maybe 10 seconds, then stopped. I counted to 20 in my head. I don't know why. Then I grabbed my phone from the table, turned on the camera, and flipped it to selfie mode so I could see behind me without turning around. The hallway was empty. The bathroom door was open about a foot. I had left it closed. Not latched, but closed, because the hallway was narrow and the door got in the way. I turned then, slowly. Nothing was there. The apartment looked normal. My bedroom door was shut. The bathroom light was off. I walked to the bathroom and checked the fan switch. It was off. The mirror over the sink was fogged around the edges. Not fully steamed up, just misted in a soft oval like someone had breathed on it very close. I hadn't showered that morning. I hadn't even run hot water. I backed out and closed the door. I called Leora. She answered on the fourth ring, sounding half asleep and annoyed. She lived in Leeds and had 2 kids, so mornings were usually chaos for her, but this was early enough that her house was still quiet. I told her someone might have accessed my email. She said, "Change your password." I said, "No, I mean from my laptop." She woke up more after that. I read the draft to her. I didn't mention the bathroom fan at first because I could hear how I sounded. She asked if I had carbon monoxide alarms. I said yes. She told me to check them. They were fine. Green lights. No beeping. Then she asked if I was sure I hadn't written it as a note to myself. Maybe for a story idea or a dream. I said I don't write creepy little emails to myself at 4 in the morning. She said, "You do label your freezer bags by date and mood, so I'm not ruling anything out." That made me laugh once, too loud and fake.